So if you already have a question that you know you'd like to ask anybody that's listed on this agenda, there is a question form that you can fill out so that we can hand it to them so that we can make sure this runs as smoothly as possible. The purpose of this town hall is for those who you have elected or those who work in positions within the county can give you information about what it is that they're working on, but also for you guys to hold us accountable for our representation of you as voting members of our district, whether you're in Spirit Valley or Legislative District 2 as one for our senators and representatives. One of the things, I'm going to break it up a little bit and do a quiz session, and then you guys can win a prize to break up the monotony. You have various groups that are on the outside of this on tables, and what I did was I identified groups that have been doing a lot of work in Bonner County that you guys may not have seen if you don't travel towards Sandpoint. So I'm going to list who these people are. They're going to give you a little introduction as we go through. But we've got politically active Christians. We've got Tactical Homeopathy. We have Make America Free Again, which is a medical freedom group. We have People's Rights. We have the Bonner County Republican Central Committee. We should also have the women's group here as well. We have 7B Cares. We also have our own Blanchard area radio group. And I encourage everybody to make sure you go to that direction because that's pivotal for our communication in our community. So with that being said, I'll ask the first question. Who can tell me all 9 of the county elected officials? Who knows all 9? What? Nobody knows all 9?
I think so.
Somebody save this group. Kristen.
I'm going to give it a go.
If you're wrong, you're kicked out.
Darn. At least it's a good day. Okay. We have Sheriff Wheeler.
What?
We have Asia Williams, Luke Mock, and Steve Bradshaw.
There's 4.
We have, oh my gosh, my Mike Rosedale.
I was going to say she's running.
Over here, she's giving me answers. Okay, and then we have our assessor, Grant Dorman.
There
We
you
have
go.
our treasurer, Clarissa Coster.
Okay.
Oh, we have the coroner, Robert Beers. Thank you.
And
Tells really good jokes. Who else? Was that
I
9?
asked you. No, you didn't hit 9.
All right, I give up. Oh, district attorney, yes. Not the prosecutor. The prosecutor, and that would be Lewis Marshall.
There you go.
Did I get them all?
You got it all. Go on there. And in response to your team and the way the day is, a Blanchard Mercantile, I'll call it and say it's a tea mug, but you use it the way you want.
Thank you.
All right, you guys should have gotten, some of you saw the agenda that's here. I also included our precinct map because a lot of people don't know what our map is for the precinct, so you can see where Spirit Valley is. I did get a response from Russ Fulcher. I said that I would read it, except that the response said, go to the internet and look what I posted, but it was from March, so you guys can address your representative. I'm not giving a specific response on reporting out. He is in Washington, D.C., but I didn't get a direct response to give to Spirit Valley from him. So with that being said, I am going to introduce Dale Hawkins. We elected him to be our representative. This is his first term as our representative down at the state office. He's come to our community before. Now that the legislative session is over, we want to allow him to tell us what he has worked on, what's important, and for you guys to get feedback regarding how you see the work that he did, and if you have any specific questions to Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you, Asia. Want me to stand up so everybody
So that they can
can
see.
see? So I'm Dale Hawkins, obviously Legislative District 2B, and like Asia said, this is my freshman year. So if I'm going to look back and think of some things that I accomplished, I did for the state party and the national party carried a bill that prohibited ranked choice voting, and we did get that through the House and the Senate and signed by the governor, which I was surprised that he signed it, but I knew that we would get it into law. A lot of people don't understand, but just know this, every state where ranked choice voting has occurred, it turns blue, and it destroys the structure of a state if it's conservative. Another bill that I carried that made it through and signed by the governor was one that cleaned up a law. Right now we have laws that prohibit people who are non-citizens from voting in federal elections, but there's no law that prohibits your county from allowing non-citizens to vote. Well, as July 1st, there will be, because we got that all the way through. This was critical because our country's being invaded by people who are not seeking to become citizens. So it's important that we shore up these things. Other than that, everybody's experience in the legislature was different. I know that I spent the first month in my main committee. I'm on the House Education Committee, and we watched all these bureaucrats come in and lobby us. Well, when I was first there, I didn't know that that's what they were doing. I just thought we come in and they're just teaching us what's going on. But after about 4 or 5 weeks of this presentations, and then all of a sudden the bills start flowing, then you realize what was going on. And from what I understand, we were one of the few committees that actually that occurred. I didn't know it wasn't occurring in the other committees, but when the bills began to come, then I understood what was going on. I chose the Education Committee because I see what's happening with our kids. And they're the future of not just our state, but our country. And the things that are coming at them are insane. Well, it's even far worse than I ever imagined. As many of you may know, there was a lot of good legislation that we tried to get through the House Ed Committee that failed. Like stuff as simple as taking pornographic material, and we weren't even trying to ban the books, which maybe we should have, but because libraries and school libraries and the colleges are all state funded, but we were just trying to get those materials moved into a section of the library where they weren't accessible by minors. And if I stood up here, and I don't know how many of you are familiar, if I read out of one of these books, right now, there's probably some people under 18 in the room, maybe not, I don't know. I could be arrested by Sheriff Wheeler for distributing pornography or speaking in a certain way with minors in the room. And yet these are allowed in our libraries, and a 12-year-old can check them out. Well, we weren't even trying to get them removed. We were trying to get them placed in a section where they didn't have access. Right now, if you go into a library and there's an R-rated movie, if you're not 18 or older, you can't rent the movie. But if it's a book, they let it go. And some of these books are atrocious. They're beyond what you would think. And I talked to one librarian in my area, and she said the most difficult thing she had when she first started is when a 12-year-old came in and checked out 50 Shades of Grey. Now, that's pretty light material compared to some of the material they have. And not only could she not refuse the child from checking out the book, she couldn't contact the parent and let them know. So all we were trying to do was fix this so that children weren't exposed. And the committee had a very uneven balance of those who I would say are conservative and care about our future, because we couldn't even get that bill out of the House Ed Committee. The author of that bill had to rewrite the bill and bring it in through another legal avenue, through a different committee, which it then passed on the floor, and it passed in the Senate and was vetoed by the governor. And we did not have enough votes in the House to overturn the veto. There was many people who voted for it in the beginning and then switched their votes. So this is the temperature of our state. When people said when people say we live in a red state, Idaho's a conservative state, I don't think so anymore. And what we have to do is we have to fight for ground, and that's one of the reasons I ran for office. I want to thank everybody who supported us, before, and the fight's still on. We have another session and an election to go through at the same time, and I hope to serve you well, and if you have any questions at all, I'd be glad to answer them.
question that did write down after hearing him speak.
I did. I mean, I do have a question. Yeah. Okay. So
State your
I,
name and address for, no, I'm just.
I talked to our librarian in Priest River, and she was of the firm belief that had this bill passed, that she would have to ban children from the library because they walk past the adult section to get to the children's section. And she said that, you know, our disabled kids would not be able to come in, or because the books would still be available to the kids. So is there a way to rewrite this to make sure that it's clear, or what's your answer to that?
I could probably do it without that. I'm pretty loud. Can everybody hear me? So there was a communication chain within some of the library associations, the organizations that librarians belong to. And there was a campaign to spread misinformation to the libraries. I got an email from a library assistant in my library in Fernwood, Idaho. And he was like, well, I know you, don't you think this is encroaching on the First Amendment? Isn't this a slippery slope? Well, he was still under the impression that we were trying to ban books. What this bill required was the library to enact a policy. That would have meant if they had books that were accessible, that they rearranged the structure of the library so that the books weren't accessible. And the mere fact that a minor would walk by a book wouldn't cause a violation. It would be if that library let that minor have access or check it out, which they should have control of. I mean, I don't know the size of every library, some are pretty big. But if you put the adult material in one section, you should be able to control it. And that's all it asked. And in case there's a question out there, then there was well, we're going to sue librarians. That wasn't true either. In the final version of the bill, it was a $2,500 civil suit ability toward the library network, not librarians individually. I don't know if that completely answered your question or not.
Just how can we get the truth to the librarians?
Well, now you know it. I mean, I don't know another way other than I mean, we could print material, I guess, and distribute it. But there's a couple of these librarian organization clubs. Some of them are just, I think, naive and listening to the other voices. Some of them are nefarious and they have an objective and a plan. There are people in this state that want your children exposed to this. People who want to lower the age of sexual consent. People who want to cut body parts off children because they say, well, my child knew it wasn't in the right body at 3. You know, this is what we're dealing with. This is, I would call it demonic in nature. It's evil. And they have an objective, and it's your children. So.
I think you have 2 cards in front of you.
You don't want to let somebody else play? Oh, can legislation be changed for state rules regarding tax-funded boards? Then it says, i.e., Ponderay Hospital District Trustee Board. If I'm not mistaken, this is a county issue in general.
Don't look at me.
I'm looking at the county commissioner, and whether or not we could have legislation that would curb this, I'm not really sure. I mean, we could try to pass anything, but we have to first find out if it's constitutionally within our lane. You know, and my honest answer is, I don't know.
I want to respect that was your answer, because it just tells us that's something that we can look at. We do have taxing districts, and I think he's right that it would fall more on your county than it would on your state. And that's where you want it to sit. Local government is closer to the people. The farther you go up the chain, the farther away from the people you are. And that is a local issue.
So, and on the tails of that, I was at a town hall last night, and up the St. Joe in Calder, Idaho, which is a very small community, and they have a lot of little issues that they want the government to come in and fix. And I pleaded with them, as communities, we need to learn to solve these issues, because every time you ask the government to get involved, you lose your liberty, you lose your freedom. I don't know how I got Phil's name first, but please, can you give me an update on the federal overreach on natural gas and LP?
Can I ask, does the person who asked that question have parents that own a gas fireplace business?
Of Rule 8.
Did that you asked that question, didn't you?
Maybe. Well, I'll tell you something we did do, and gosh, I'm terrible, I don't remember if it made it all the way through. What we did is there was a movement through the Association of Cities that they wanted to be able to have control to ban certain resources like go all electric, and we put a bill through that would not allow cities to dictate what developers wanted to use for resources for the development, whether they wanted natural gas or propane or electric was up to them. In other words, municipalities couldn't control what you wanted to do in your home. So we did get that through partway. I don't know if it made it all the way through. And that would have been through local government. But we'll know before the end of the meeting. How's that? I don't know who asked the question. I will get the answer for the end of the meeting. So.
Sounds good, thank you. So our next guest speaker is Senator Phil Hart. This is also his first time in this role for our legislative district. So please welcome Senator Hart to Spirit Valley.
Let me see if you can all hear me without the microphone. Yeah. Okay, good. I'm going to talk about two bills that I worked on this session that I was successful with, or somewhat successful with. The first was a memorial to address the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe versus Wade. I'm pro-life. Most people in Idaho are pro-life, and the Dobbs decision mentioned about probably about 10 times that the abortion issue was a state issue, that the federal government should not have been involved in it. It also mentioned that Roe versus Wade really had no intellectual or constitutional foundation, and it was something that the court needed to address and overturn. And when I read that decision, it reminded me of a bill I ran when I was in the House back in, I think it was 2011. It was a wolf emergency bill, and I was surprised how that all unfolded. The bill went through the House really fast. They suspended the rules in both the House and the Senate. It got to the governor's desk in about 3 weeks from launching the bill. And before the governor could sign the bill, Congress took the wolves off the endangered species list. And by doing that, they took management away from the federal government and turned it over to the state government. Because when a species is so-called endangered, federal government manages that species. So we never declared the emergency because the federal government just handed us management of the wolves by taking them off the endangered species list. And then what they did is Congress restricted the jurisdiction of the federal courts from hearing cases relative to what they had just done. And what I learned through that process is there's only one court that was created by the Constitution. That was the Supreme Court of the United States. All the other federal courts are created by Congress, and what Congress creates, Congress can dictate what their jurisdiction is. So my memorial that dealt with the Roe versus Wade decision being overturned was to request that Congress restrict the jurisdiction of the federal courts from hearing cases that related to a legislature's ability to legislate on the abortion issue. And why that is important if we're a pro-life state is it would give us the ability to kind of control that issue and prevent it from getting tied up in federal court. And we know that the people opposed to the pro-life view on that would love to tie it up in federal court. So anyways, that bill did get through both the House and the Senate, didn't require the governor's signature. And so now the real work begins. I'd like to see other states pass that memorial, and I'd like to see the federal government actually do that. And I just want to point out that back on the wolf issue, There was a case filed in federal court in 2022, or at least it was decided in 2022, where the federal court was ruling on the wolf issue. It affected all the lower 48 states except for Idaho, and Idaho got carved out of that lawsuit because of the House bill we ran back in 2011. And I went to the Attorney General's office and said, well, how much money did the state of Idaho save because we didn't have to fight that lawsuit? And they thought it was about $1 million. So anyways, it works, we can do that, and so I'm gonna spend the next couple of years trying to get the federal courts to actually do that by getting more states on board to ask for that. The other bill I ran that had some success was a bill, it was Senate Bill 1110, and it would have required any machine that we use in the state of Idaho that counts votes off of paper ballots. Typically we use a paper ballot, it gets fed through a machine, the machine tallies the votes for various candidates. It would require any machine like that to use open source software. Right now, the voting machine companies program each machine for each election with a thumb drive, which is essentially has software written on that thumb drive. And the voting machine companies say that that software is intellectually protected property, and we can't see the code. So we don't know how the votes are being tallied, whether they're being tallied correctly or incorrectly. And right now, the confidence in our electoral process is very low. So we need more transparency. So what my bill would have required is that any software be open source software, in that we can see the source code, we can see the machine language, we can have more eyes on it, and we can know that the votes are being tallied correctly. Well, what happened on that bill was I got an informational hearing. It was in Senate State Affairs. They didn't vote on the bill, but leadership offered to create a working group. So over this course of the summer, we're going to have a legislative committee that's going to be formed for either 1 or 2 years that's going to investigate this issue and come back with legislation next year, hopefully. And Idaho's only 1 of 3 states that have addressed this issue. So I don't think we're going to clean up our election process in one bill or in 1 year. We're going to have to probably take about 20 bites at that process to incrementally make it better and better. But I think this is one of the main area, or big areas, where cheating could be going on. And we had about, I think it was 44 election integrity bills that ran this year. And mine was the only one that dealt with technology. So I hope to bring a bill back next year to deal with that. And then I want to mention one other thing that wasn't part of the legislative session, but 2 weeks ago I went down to the Mexican border in Arizona, and it is bad down there. I've been down there 3 times. The last time was 10 years ago. I was in the same spot last week as I was 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, you had small groups of illegal aliens coming across the border. They would work their way across Arizona state, about 30, 40, 50 miles. Get further into the state, they carried clean clothes with them. They would dump their clothes they used to cross the desert, put on clean clothes. The vehicle would pick them up and they'd pretend like they belonged in Arizona. Well, it's way worse right now. What you've got is, because of the Biden policy, as soon as an illegal alien is 5 inches north of that border, they basically have a Disneyland e-ticket to America, and Border Patrol processes them and not only turns them loose, but gives them a bus ticket or a plane ticket to wherever they want to go. And so I was standing right on the border. We had found this group of 12 illegal aliens. I saw about over 100 come through in 2 days. But this first group was a group of about 12, and they're just north of the border. They're standing right next to the fence. They're kind of milling around. I was with a group of folks who watched the border. They called Border Patrol. So it was in a hilly area, and we have a 30-foot wall, tall steel wall, and Border Patrol drives over the hill on the road next to the fence. And as soon as this group of illegal aliens saw Border Patrol, I got to back up. On the back of Border Patrol's uniform, it says U.S. Border Police. They're law enforcement. These people crossing the border are illegal aliens committing a crime. So you have these illegal aliens, when they see Border Patrol, they queue up like they're waiting for a municipal bus, get in line to be picked up by Border Patrol to be processed. I mean, there's no fear whatsoever that they're committing a crime and law enforcement is showing up. And so we're told that if you're against, what's happening at the border, you're racist or whatever. But the reality is, these people are getting to these places on the border through the cartels, the drug cartels. They're tracked once they cross the border. Some of them are ending up in sweatshops. Some of them are ending up as sex slaves. Some of them end up in even worse places than that. And if you have compassion for these people, you're going to want to put a stop to this and create a policy where the people who come across the border come across legally and have their rights protected. So these people are being abused. Most of them probably don't know it, and the situation is really bad, and I believe that there's probably, a couple of million coming across a year. I don't know what the number is, but it's way out of control. And I think it really threatens our sovereignty of our nation, because I don't think we can handle all these people who need, social services and are not going to assimilate. So anyways, that's a big issue. I'm going to write a report to the leadership of the House and the Senate and the governor and send something to our congressional delegation. And I went down there on my own. I think it's a big issue. I was invited down by a group in Arizona, and it's just a big issue that we all should be aware of. So if anyone has questions, I'd be happy to field some questions.
One person texted, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
To get in touch with
Get
me?
in contact with you.
I have some cards here. If you click onto the QR code here, it'll get you on my newsletter list.
We have an
And-
anti-QR code group.
And I got 3 addresses and my phone number on here
All
too.
right, I have one that will
Sure.
be copied and distributed, and make sure that she does not have a spare QR code. I know people. All right, questions left. How porous is the northern border?
I don't know. There's no fence there. I know there's a clear area along the border, and I know there's lots of sensors there, so if you try to come across, the Border Patrol will be alerted.
Anything else for the senator? Rick Gray. No, this is the one I told you to interact with over your election, so short for the audience and drain his ear after. Go ahead.
Just a quick question about, we have some legislation regarding audits following elections this year. And the term audit is misleading because the systems we use cannot be audited. We can recount manually ballots and do many other things, but the machines cannot be audited as part of your open source efforts. Since we can't really see what's in the machines, why are we calling them audits instead of something more appropriate such as counts, counts, or whatever? It's misleading and necessary information.
Right, and it doesn't do any good to do an audit if you're counting the same counterfeit votes over and over again. So, good point.
A work in progress. Now, can you guys project, or do you need me to walk back to you? Project.
I'm just wondering, with all of these illegals coming across into our country, how much is it costing us? Medical, housing, schools, costing us. People have the idea what it's costing. Surely they would prove it.
I'm a freshman senator, but I did serve 8 years in the House from 2004 to 2012. And I did run a few bills to deal with the illegal alien problem. It's a federal issue, so it's hard to deal with that on the state level. But anyways, I did a calculation on how much we spent each year in the nation supporting the illegal alien population who's not assimilating and who needs social services. So I remember what I came up with was it costs more to support the illegal aliens each year than it would have cost to build the wall, which is 1,900 miles long, with brand new Cadillacs, put vertical with the hood and the engine buried in the ground and the rest of the car sticking up out of the ground. So that was cheaper than dealing with this illegal alien issue year after year after year.
I think this is a fantastic topic, but I want to redirect for our region because these are all complaints that Cowboy hat.
Yeah, thank you. So regarding your audit, your committee you put down, how do you assess the people that are there are going to be unbiased and don't have agendas more towards people that don't want you understanding how the voting software is correctly made?
I don't know. So I requested certain membership. It's my bill, my idea, so I went to the pro tem and I requested certain people to be put on the committee, but it's his decision and the speaker's decision. But I would hope that no matter which side of the aisle you're on, you would be in favor of honest elections. And what I've learned in my years in the legislature is most people in the legislature, even though we disagree with some of them, they are there for I don't know, purist reasons. They're there to promote their agenda, which they actually believe in, and there's not too many that I would say are corrupt or are there for some other agenda. So we'll just have to see how the process works out, but I think it'll work out well.
Another question?
Yeah, not sure where to address this question, but I understand it's really hard to get squatters off your land. Somehow that might have been written into law decades ago, because I've heard from people that they allow somebody to live there in a box or something, and years later, they still can't have them removed legally.
You know, I know there's a statute on that, and I know when I was in the House 10 years ago, we shortened the amount of time that, I know we dealt with that issue and we made it a little easier for a landowner to enforce their property rights, but I'm not up to speed on that. But you know, the Idaho Code is online. If you go to the legislature's website, you'll find it there. You can try to do that research yourself and read up on the law.
I'm concerned because of the amount of 6 million, 7 million illegals trucking around. I just want to see them in my backwoods, like cook fires
Yeah.
in July, that sort of thing.
Well, you know, our nation is the authority in our nation comes from we the people, and we the people have been not active enough. But I do want to say too that one difference I see today versus before is we have a lot more conservatives who are active in politics. Before it was mostly the left that had the active people, but now the conservatives have sort of risen to the occasion. And I guess I disagree a little bit with Dale Hawkins. I think that we're going to see the legislature move further to conservative values, and I think we'll have a more successful session after the next election.
So with respect to the local issue, I'm gonna let Sheriff Wheeler give a response to that, because I want to focus our discussion on our local Spirit Valley areas and Bonner County. That, outside of that, you're going too far away from our area.
I don't need a mic. Yes, sir, to address any possible squatters, there are two issues that the sheriff's office would look at. First of all, if you're a homeowner and you have no trespassing signs on your property, we can immediately react and enforce the no trespassing if someone comes on your property, immediately. So we have great trespassing laws. The second question is, if you're a homeowner or a representative of a homeowner and you allow someone to establish residency, then they have rights. They have tenant rights. So those have to be distinguished there, and then we can help you if you have that case, that we can help you go through the eviction process. But we have, in Bonner County, have no fears of illegals or anyone else coming into our county and squatting on your property without your permission. If someone is there and you want them removed as a homeowner, we will remove them immediately. And if they refuse to leave, we will arrest them for trespassing. So those are the two issues. I think it's simply put, your rights will be preserved and no one squats in Bonner County.
All right,
I think it's Heather's turn.
Did you smell your eyes earlier? Go ahead.
Daryl, do the signs have to be posted in English and Spanish?
No.
And that's why I stared at it, because I knew there was something tricky about her
I have to go down to St. Mary's today to do another speech this afternoon, so I'm gonna save my voice a little bit. Thank you, Asia, for putting this on. Things like this. We got a gem with her, and things like this are critical to keep the community together, and so I so appreciate you doing this, because God knows we don't have time to organize our own events anymore. Our new district now is 5 counties. We have Bonner County, Kootenai County, parts of those 2, and then we have all of Benewah County, all of Clearwater County, which is, I think, is about 5 or 6 hours away from here, and then Shoshone County. So we have all those new people trying to get our time and energy, and so that's probably, this is much appreciated, let's just say that. So this is my 5th term, and before you get stressed out about that, I have not compromised. I'm still not compromising, and I'm still one of the top-rated legislators. This legislative session has been my best session so far, and one of the big factors to that was that we got rid of our Speaker of the House, Scott Bedke. So he got shipped to the Senate, which was great, and that was very beneficial to me because we actually got a conservative Speaker of the House who has not bullied me, who's not intimidated me, who actually lets me do my job. That being said, I've got the same committees, State Affairs, Environment, Energy, and Technology, and then Vice Chairman of Judiciary and Rules Committee, which was a new role for me this year. The other speaker wasn't going to let me do anything. So that's been good for me to grow and to be able to actually run bills. And I got a lot of bills passed this year. Bills that I got passed and worked on, I did a resolution on the Electoral College, and that got passed. I did a bill on the Idaho Outfitters and Guides for their liability, and I'm not going to go into detail on any of these, except one. I did something about the slow-moving vehicles. We had loggers up here that were having trouble because they didn't have anywhere to pull over, and ISP was giving them tickets for not pulling over for being a slow-moving vehicle. So we gave them a little wiggle room in the law. I also worked on bills, an immigration bill. A lot of these I carried them in the House, and Scott Herndon did the bulk of the work in the Senate. So we just kind of tag teamed on these. A vac status for CPS, where they cannot take your children based on your vac status, your vac status, or their vac status. I don't know if anyone's here from Priest Lake that have been dealing with the Priest Lake siphon, but that was a big success. We're going to make anything they want to do up there have to go through the legislature. Don't clap because there's a whole bunch. These are just the ones I worked on. Make it a misdemeanor to falsely report CPS cases. So there's actually like people that just continually to turn people in over and over with no consequences. And then another bill, this one, a lot of these were started by Scott Herndon, but a bathroom bill for contracting. In contracts in Bonner County, there were clauses in there saying that you can't get this contract, you can't get awarded this contract unless you provided same-sex bathrooms on site and back at your office. So it was kind of weird. And then I ran a couple other bills. My very favorite bill that I didn't mention yet was MOUs and MOAs, I called it. It's agreements in government. So last December, I record requested how many agreements our state government had at the state level. And I thought there might be 200 or 300 agreements. Agreements are, memorandums of understanding, memorandums of agreement, or just regular agreements. I figured 300 or 400. Anyone want to take a guess on how many? 10,000. I got 5,600. This is just the list. This isn't the actual agreements. This is how Common Core came into our state through one of these agreements, an MOU. So I passed a bill, and I've been working on this the whole session, but it finally got passed, and it makes this have to be posted at the state controller's site. So now you can go in and look at all the agreements. Any government agency or bureaucrat that enters an agreement has to register it with the state controller within 10 days, and those will all be available so you can actually see the agreements your government is involved in. This is how come there's so many agendas in our state that are not our agendas. So this was a great bill that I was pretty excited about. Let's see, so many bills this session were centered around protecting children. It's just amazing that we have to pass bills like this. I'm going to quickly highlight the other bills that passed, quickly here. We passed a bill to make it illegal to perform same-sex surgeries on children. We had to define the word abstinence for our government-run schools because they were defining it as any type of sex but you couldn't get pregnant. That's how they were teaching our children abstinence. So we had to redefine that for them. We expanded parental rights in schools to make parents primary stakeholders in their child's education, and also allow some choice in enrolling your kids in different schools outside of your district. We passed a bill that make it illegal to have TikTok on our phones, our state phones and our state computers. We passed a bill to stop foreign governments from buying or acquiring interest in Idaho agricultural land. Water rights and mineral claims. We did some stuff on ESG, and if you don't know what that is, you will soon. Social scoring. I don't know that it was enough, but it was a start. We had to pass a bill to require government-run schools to have separate bathrooms for the kids, locker rooms and showers. If you still have your kids or your grandkids in public schools, I call them government-run schools, do everything you can to get them out. It is not a good environment. We passed a bill to require daycares to, when they send out the stuff for all the vaccinations you have to have, they have to also allow you to know that you can opt out of the vaccination. So that's a huge, huge win for the citizens. And then a couple of things on guns. The credit card companies are putting a code with when you buy ammo or when you buy extremism and political violence, but they basically want to stop any speech that they don't agree with, but they're calling it extremism and extreme speech. So there's a lot of groups out there. If you look up all of our scores on the Kids Matter Index, Idaho children are primary, we all rate really low. I got a 17%. And you think, wow, Heather doesn't care about children, but this group is out there pushing the bill to do the sex change on children's under the guise of being a group about Idaho children are primary. So there's a lot of phony groups out there. I encourage you to do your homework, educate others. That's the only way. We have to be vigilant. We have to build relationships, change the hearts and minds of our neighbors. If you don't have the 101 things, it's nonpartisan. You can reach out to your neighbors. It's ways to engage. I'll never stop talking about it, and I left them in the back. If you want more, you can contact me. That's it, I think. There's one more thing. There's some good groups moving into the state to help us. I think a lot of people nationwide are realizing if you can't save Idaho, the country's gone. And so we've got Young Americans for Liberty, the Citizens Alliance for Idaho. There's a lot of groups that are just really focused. I got asked to be part of the Club for Growth. It's been a group they invite only. They've invited me. I went to an event last week. It's a networking nationwide with other conservative legislators. Talking about the border, I did meet a gentleman that had just done a fundraiser with Trump 3 days earlier on the Border Patrol. He's talking about getting ready for his election for president. And immigration is one of his top issues. And this gentleman I spoke to, I forget the name of the group, was Border 911. They want to come to Idaho and see what our northern border looks like. And so there are people out there that want to help, that are working. Idaho's a target state this year. Just like they flipped Colorado, Idaho is a target state. Your vote is more important this year than ever. May is the most important time. And so I think that's it. I hit on most of the things. I have some questions, and I guess whatever you want to do. David?
I want to hear more about the Freedom Caucus in relation to District 1 and District 2, on our representatives and our senators, who's a part of it.
Well, I will let you know. So you can have a public or it's not a secretive, what's the word? A silent member. But we are all public members, if I'm not mistaken.
The three of you, do you know about District 1?
It is, it's by design that we don't share every name. It helps us, I know everybody wants to know exactly who's on it and
Yeah.
who's not. It helps us strategically with the voting, with our strategy on the inside game. So we're never gonna reveal everybody's name on it, but if you watch the numbers, you can kind of figure it out, but you never really know for sure. And that's part of our strength, so I'm not gonna reveal all that. But it has been great to network, and we find out what's coming. We found out about an amnesty bill that they were trying to push. Of all people, the Farm Bureau is pushing this bill. The Farm Bureau is pushing the illegal driver's license bill. They wanted to give a legal driver's license. So make sure these groups that may have been good once before, whoever gets in charge of those groups, it can change the direction. So I forget what I was going to say about that, but it seemed important. Go ahead.
Well, real quick, I was just gonna say, I looked up while you were talking, the Idaho Leaders United is that group, statewide coalition created to denounce violent political extremism, bigotry, and discrimination. Anyway, they called out people's rights specifically, which I'm gonna talk about a little bit in a little bit. But one thing I wanted you to maybe expand on, I thought it would be worth mentioning, going back to those agreements, the MOUs, and how those come into our county via grants or like ARPA funds, et cetera. So I thought it'd be good worthwhile.
I'm sure Asia can expand more, but she's a lone voice in our county. And I'm sad to say that, and I'm just sad to hear where our county has gotten. She would be the one that can help navigate it, but she's outvoted. It's 2-1 sometimes, and so the county can enter into all times, sorry, I didn't mean that, all times. You have to go to those county commissioner meetings, and you have to put pressure on those other two commissioners to stay out of some of these agreements. A lot of these agreements are non-profit, NGOs they call them, regional government groups. Like at the state level, it's the National Governors Association, the Western Governors Association. Many of these groups, you can link them right to the World Economic Forum. And so there's a lot of ways it can slip in. You just have to go to every single meeting that you can. And when this gets posted, there's gonna be probably 10,000 agreements. You cannot rely on your legislators to go and research every one of those. We need 10,000 people and one person to be an expert on every one of those. That's how you fix government. You don't fix it by just voting right, because I've been voting right for 9 years and it's getting worse. So we have to have everybody engaged, all hands on deck. We have to secure our local elections with good people that don't let us down.
All right, you got one question there left on your card.
So I had a question about adjudication, and I think Norm Semenko's back there. What happens after the federal money runs out? Yeah.
We print more.
We just keep printing. What's Idaho's plan for the central banking? I've been running a cash bill that makes you have to accept cash. I think it's going to be societal breakdown it's going to be bad when we all go digital, because a lot of people do not want to go digital, and I don't blame them. So we have tried to get gold and silver bills passed, and we just can't quite secure it. We get it to the Senate, and we can't get it. It didn't pass, did it?
No,
It
they get a
didn't
hearing.
pass. We have to clean up our Senate. You guys did a great job by getting, well, you guys didn't, but the rest of the county did a good job with getting Scott Hernan in there. He's a rock star. Phil's a hot rock star. You guys have and us four of the most conservative people almost in the northern end of the state. So I don't have an idea for that. And then, is anyone working on stopping the United Nations from rolling out smart cities? Yes, there is an expert on smart cities. He's actually, I think, out of Montana. He's been giving talks in Coeur d'Alene or Zoom calls. I think maybe you'll hear more about that later. So some of these calls you can call into, and they're everywhere. Boise's complete. I've noticed south of here a lot of smart city stuff. So I don't think it's even in the legislature's radar at this point. I mean, that's the reality. Educating people and trying to stop it at the local level is best.
All right.
Thank you.
So next up, we're gonna have the Republican Committee and Women's Committee tell what their groups are about while we switch out. These three have an event down south, so that if you guys want to continue to stay, you may stay.
It would be very great if these three could stay when I give my report.
You need that much protection?
No, you'll understand why. I'm serious.
No, we can stay.
May I switch places with that in the roster?
No, they're gonna go, you can have, we'll leave them here to help you.
Okay. No,
Okay.
not to help me.
But, as she's walking up,
I
how,
would love to.
Can she go next? Can he go next to we stay and then we leave?
oh, you want, this schedule is perfect.
Sorry. Sorry.
Boy.
I'm sorry. I'm Mike Rosedale, I'm Bonner County Clerk. And I want to thank all three of these representatives and senator for their super conservatism. I very much appreciate that. One thing we have as elected officials at the county level is trying to convey things that we know about in person to the state level. And Heather and Sage both have called me multiple times to ask me questions on either elections or taxing, and I very much appreciate that. It's hard enough for the county officials to get a grip on. For the state, it's even an order of magnitude more difficult because they don't deal with that day in and day out. As far as election, I would like to say just a couple things, and this demonstrates some of the challenges we have. The bill that went through to make somebody a U.S. citizen to vote is fantastic. We've always had that. Actually, you have to, on the registration card, swear under penalty of perjury that you are a U.S. citizen. So that's one thing. When we're talking about programming ballots, open source, I agree that open source would be good. Programming ballots, however, Bonner County actually programs our own. It never touches anybody else. I think we may be the only county in Idaho that does that, but we aren't touched by a programmer, a central point at all. So we program our own, everything stays internal. And we, yes sir.
I was gonna say, in Benoit County, we're still hand counting, no machines
Yeah,
involved.
there are 7 counties that don't even use computers at all. So it's pretty impossible to program theirs. So that was the main thing I wanted to convey. Thank you for listening, and it's very difficult to convey. If the state go to unique ballot IDs, and I could talk about that, there's no way you can stuff the ballot box. That would be a huge factor. I think only 2 or 3 counties in Idaho do that, and only Hart does that. The Hart system does that. So anyway, that's that. The other thing I wanted to say, let's see, auditing, I've had wonderful discussions with Mr. Gray on this, and he's correct. They don't audit the software at all. What we do when audit, so there's 2 terms. One is audit, one's a recount. The recount does the paper ballots. They do an audit, like for ours, we have a logic and accuracy which proofs out the results based on a test deck. And so you can proof out to make sure nothing is wrong with the software that way. But they do audit things like check-ins, issued ballots, absentee ballots, spoiled ballots, And when we do those, we get the question was asked, how do we know that the people that come do that aren't biased or plants or whatever? We request people attend from the Republican Central Committee and the Democrat Central Committee to staff that, to help the Secretary of State do the audits. We normally have a great showing from the Republicans. We normally have almost nobody from the Democrats because they've even said that all of their members are registered Republicans. Surprise, surprise. Anyway, so we do that. That's the main thing I wanted to say with you folks here. Thank you for listening. But I would love to talk with you personally about that. Bonner County is different than most other counties, if not every other county, on that regard. And I agree that there is voter fraud rampant throughout the U.S. Certainly 7 or 8 states are just egregious beyond egregious, and we all know that from the 2020 election, but not Bonner County. So I don't know what else you want me to.
Well, I want to let those that need to leave, and then does
Okay.
anybody have?
It's a follow-up for Heather. Heather was talking about the question that she got about smart cities. I just wanted to let you know the guy is from Montana that is fighting this hard is Aman Jabi.
Yes.
A-M-A-N, Jabi, J-A-B-E-I, I believe. There's a group in Kootenai County called Kootenai Metropolitan and Planning Organization, KMPO, that's been pushing bills regarding smart cities. And then also, if you go to stopsmartcities.org, that's another resource for anyone interested.
That guy's amazing.
Actually, I'm with this.
Oh, that's you.
Ron Shelby, we're trying to get him here. He is talking to some of our elected officials, but I do need to meet up with you because I want to follow through on some of the things we discussed.
That sounds great.
So can I forward, because I'm on that group, I'll forward the stuff to you, because she's trying to run away.
Okay.
To drive
I forgot to say, we passed property tax relief. That's kind of the biggest thing that we didn't, none of us mentioned that. That is big.
Thank you for saying, thank you.
No worries. Does anybody have questions for, not there, any election questions for Rosedale? There's a table out front where he puts some information on how to register to vote. That's going to be pivotal. We have a big influx of people to Bonner County, but specifically in our district. So we need to make sure that we help people get registered to vote.
On that note, if you register to vote, it's too late to register for this election by sending it in, but you can take it to your polling place on election day. The cards look like this. Fill out all 10 squares. Just take it to your polling place. It will save you time. They can then process that if you're not registered to vote. It's not too late also to get an absentee ballot. Those forms look like this. We do check your signatures to make sure it's you on the request, and we make sure it's your signature when you send the envelope back. But if you do this, fill it out and get it back immediately, because who knows what's going to happen with the mail. It could take time, and you don't want your ballot not to count. Every election, we get ballots back too late, and we get signatures that don't match yours. They actually were, but we can't verify with you in time, so they never, ever get counted.
Mike, can you talk about early voting,
Yep.
absentee voting, and how do you become a poll worker? Do you need poll workers so that we can make sure we're represented as Spirit Valley on this?
Sure, early voting starts Monday at 9 o'clock. It's going to run for 2 weeks till the Friday before the election day. And you can register and vote there in person. Election's going to be obviously 8 to 8 on Tuesday the 16th at your normal polling places. If you want to be, Mrs. Maris can talk about being a judge, which she's not going to be this time. What else was the other one?
Poll workers.
Poll workers. We always need poll workers. I think we have enough for this election, but we have an application. Put that in because we have people drop out all the time for whatever reasons. They get sick, they have a sickness in the family or whatever. Give them to us, and we will call you. And we have training and all that, and it's good to have a backup roster.
And then the invitation for people to actually observe how you count so that they can be confident.
Yeah, you're welcome to come. You can come to the administration building on election night. That's always open. Every once in a while, we feel like there could be a little weirdness going on at a national level, so I asked Darrell for some help, and just to make sure nothing goes on, not from us, but people from outside our state or whatnot, and he provides help that way.
I have a question. On the form, it says, I swear I'm a citizen of the United States.
Yes. It says,
I dig that. I understand.
yeah, are you a
I know where it's
citizen
at.
under penalty of perjury?
Okay,
Yeah.
under the penalty of
Yeah.
perjury. So what guarantee do you have that this criminal who's already broke the law?
Oh, there's no way I can verify that.
Yeah. So
Also-
what's the penalty at that point?
Well, that would be, I would hand, if that gets proved out, it would be something that it would have to be brought to my attention, just as if somebody died from another state. There's a limited amount of resources we have on election day, for instance, like when you're chief judge at Renco. There's limited resources you have. If you find out, you would hand that over to the sheriff and or Lewis Marshal, or to me, and I would hand it over to them, and we would follow that line.
It sounds good, but I understand.
The sieve or the net to catch fraud is not perfect.
Yes. So we have to poll watch.
We do not have poll watchers this time, yet.
On
Yes.
this side, you have 2 minutes. Sure.
And this is probably gonna sound like a really dumb question,
Not at all.
and I'm just not informed. How do you stop a public official from registering as a Republican when they're a Democrat?
You have
You
a
can't-
public forum so that you can vet out that person from doing that. This is how you prevent those people from winning and running like that. Because I don't,
If you're running for the mayor,
Lie.
if you're the mayor of Sandpoint and run for governor, that causes a problem.
Senator Harden can answer some of that for you.
Kootenai County started a system, if you will, to vet candidates. And they have a elections committee in their Republican Party Central Committee. And they invite all the candidates to come and be interviewed by the elections committee. They have a questionnaire that you fill out before the interview. And if they think that they want to recommend you, then they do a background check on you. And if you get past all that process, then they'll put out a sample ballot of who they recommend, and it's put out by the Republican Party Central Committee, and it's been very effective. Other counties are adopting it, and you should be doing it here in Bonner County.
You know what? Okay, good. Talking about the net on how to keep fraud happening, there's one huge gaping hole, and it has not been plugged. It attempted to be plugged, and that is the personal identification affidavit. You can come and vote on election day without showing any ID whatsoever, and just swear you are who you say you are. You have to be registered beforehand, but anybody could come and say, I'm not going to show you my ID. I say I'm Darrell Wheeler, and you have to accept that. And they have to accept that unless there's a personal challenger. I mean, it's crazy. So that's the one, and I know there was an attempt through the legislature to get that nixed. It did not pass. I hope they continue that push. That's one of the biggest places polls we've got.
One more question, please. Can you clarify how people get mail-in ballots? Because I was very concerned when Jim Woodward blanket sent mail-in ballots to everybody all over his jurisdiction. And that's, to me, there can be somebody who's deceased, can be somebody who's moved. How can we stop that from happening?
Sure. He didn't send mail-in ballots or mail-out ballots. He sent absentee request forms, possibly.
Okay, that's.
Only I send out the absentee, and they're by request only. Other states like Washington, California, whatever, send them to all the registered voters. We only send them to those who request, and we proof your signature on your request before we send it to you, and then your signature when it comes back.
Okay, so it doesn't go out to the county residents?
No, what we send out does not. You get lots of stuff in the mail
Right.
that looks like it's official election stuff, and it's not. There's nothing we can do about that.
All right, I'm gonna close questions for him, right? Where do you?
I just had a,
It's
Asia, I had a comment of what Senator Hart said, like, say it. I think it's very important. You guys in District 1 here. District 2, yeah, I'm sorry. District 2 are so fortunate because you have a fantastic commissioner
Yes,
who
we do.
listens and who represents you. And I just want to say, last election in District 3, where I live, we had 4 people running for office. And out of all of those, there was only one of those candidates that actually supported the sheriff's office in public safety. So I want to tell you that it's very important that in this next cycle, that you look at those candidates, each one, and really vet them out and ask them what's important to them. Surveys can be sent out and people can recommend people, but you individually need to ask that person. And if you have a question, you can ask me what I think about them, and I can tell you myself.
Not in this meeting, we don't have that much time.
Okay. So anyway, I think that's very important as we go look at the next election. And thank you, Senator Hart.
Make sure that you guys are eating, because there's a lot of food around the perimeter. We're gonna let Monique Hutchings, as a representative of Bonner County Republican Central Committee, tell you what they're about.
Good morning, and I'm glad to see such a great turnout today. My name is Monique Hutchings. I am the Bonner County State Republican woman. I'm here to talk today about the Bonner County Central Committee that we actually have. How many here know about the Bonner County Central Committee? Not enough hands. Okay. So what we are is we're the actual official Republican Party committee. So we are connected with the state. We do a lot of fundraising. We have our own search committee. We have our own elections committee. We bring people in. We vet them. We put out our recommended ballots. So most of the party that we actually have is elected by the body, by the people. Okay. So everybody knows that you have multiple precincts out here, right? No, heads nod.
I gave you a cheat sheet, open your agenda, and it says precinct map.
Yes.
Bottom left corner.
We were lucky enough to actually get Asia, who recently added on as one of our precinct committeemen. She is now representing Spirit Valley. We have almost 30 people representing for the Republican Party here for Bonner County. Like I said, most of them are actually elected. So when you actually go to your precinct ballots every 2 years, you're going to see a person running for that position. Hopefully you have a good person in that position. We have a lot of open positions, which is surprising. I think we have 3 currently. So we're always searching for new people, people that want to get involved. What we do is we have a meeting the 3rd Tuesday of every month. It's at 6:30 at the Ponderay Event Center. And we invite all of our elected officials. We have Asia. Sheriff Wheeler is almost always 100% attendance. Mike Rosedale is almost always there, unless, we do have it on a Tuesday, so it will be on election day, so I know you won't be there this next meeting. But we invite all of them, and we ask them to come. Even when they're during session, we'll open up the phones for them to call in, give reports. So this is your chance as the people to actually interact with our elected officials. We used to limit the time. We haven't been limiting the time. Sometimes the meetings run really long, but we're getting more information. We're actually able to ask more questions, get the people more involved. And we're starting to see these solid conservative people that we're getting elected showing up to these meetings. You'll see the ones that aren't as conservative not showing up to these meetings. But this is your chance to actually interact and talk with them. And if any of you guys want to get involved, you don't have to be elected to be involved in this. I'm actually not an elected PC. I have a solid conservative that's actually in my district that is my elected PC. So I've been attending the meetings for 7 years. Well, that got me involved in this as well. So I decided I was going to get involved to the point of running for the state, Bonner County State Republican woman, which means I actually get to go twice a year down to the winter and the summer meetings with all the entire state. And we actually get to vote on resolutions, we get to vote on rules, party rules. So you don't have to be elected into this to actually get involved. We encourage everybody to show up to these meetings and participate, because the participation out of the public is huge. This is your chance to talk and your chance to actually interact without being elected, so.
And if you want more information, she has a table out in the foyer that has all election for.
It has it has information on the upcoming election, it has information on all the different precincts. It has all of your precinct committeemen's information as well as the officers. So we have all of their information in there. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out. We want to interact with our people, so, yes.
I have a question. When I do my own research for the candidates, I appreciate when I can get information from a body that's, I find it very difficult to research judges, and they are very important positions.
Judges make sure that they don't put their information out there and you don't understand anything about them. That's why I always personally, I'm not suggesting you do this, I vote no on all judges. Until they want to become a little bit more clear, I don't believe that that they should actually be on the ballot without any information about themselves. So the minute that they start giving me more information, maybe I'll start voting for some of them. But the stuff that you do find out about them, it never seems to be very good.
And maybe we change that practice by doing a forum where we invite judges to come and give a discussion to us.
Oh, let's see how they show.
All right, well,
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Next, we have Anita Arett with the women's version of 501c. We don't endorse anybody, but we're here. Make that clear.
I will make that clear. Good morning, it's still morning. My name is Anita Arett, and I'm the president of Bonner County Republican Women, Inc. The Inc. is important because I've been a member of that organization for about 16 years. And over the 16 years, we have played whack-a-mole with people coming in trying to destroy or fundamentally change our organization. Too many people came in and didn't like the fact that we were unashamedly and unapologetically conservative. So what we did was we unaffiliated from the state and the National Republican Women's Group. We're a 501c4, we're involved in education, and we are conservative. We've got our members based on that, and our job is to try to get education out there. We have excellent speakers every month. We get information out. I have a couple out in the foyer. There's some little information pieces like, how do you know when somebody says conservative, that they're really a conservative? And we try to help you understand what label reaching is, and the conservatives don't do that. So we are in such, we can feel the pressure. Idaho's been targeted. And we will no longer sit idly by and be polite. You know, I'm a nice, polite Christian woman, but truth is truth, and I'm going to say it. And for instance, standing in front of you is a right-wing extremist, as dubbed by one of the directors and founders of North Idaho Voter Services. And if you think those people are conservative, you got another think coming. And so in our group, we bring in speakers and we call out the faux conservatives. We don't have any time for that anymore. We are at a critical mass. So we would love to have you join us. As I come from the People's Republican standpoint. So I'm quite familiar with label reaching. If you saw the latest interview with the mayor, he's not my mayor, with a Dutch company talking about how conservatives and Christians are the Taliban. That's nothing new. I've heard it before. As we support conservative candidates for the boards, library, hospital, we want it. Pardon me? Oh yeah, well, yeah. He's.
Anita, when are your meetings? Day and time?
Thank you. We're coming to the end of our regular meeting time. Normally we meet on the third Tuesday of every month at the VFW Hall. We're going to be meeting on the fourth Tuesday in May because the third Tuesday is election time. And we are excited to see, I'm a precinct committee person in the town of Sandpoint, in Airport District, and I can't tell you how many good refugees have moved into my neighborhood because they've all told me the same thing, this is the last stand. I left wherever they came from, and I'm standing here and fighting. So, a lot more American flags in my neighborhood. So thank you for listening. We'll be out there. If you have any questions, we'd love to have you join us or come to a meeting. You can sign up if you want to be on our email list. We always announce our meetings and events on Facebook, and I think that's it.
That's it, thank you. Patterson comes up and talk to us about politically activated Christians. Somebody tell me what the acronym DARG stands for, especially if you have a small dog and you need a vet. DARG, what does it stand for? Blanchard Area Radio Group. Who said it? Oh, I don't need it. I don't need it. Really? You throw my whole system up.
Rick said it.
All right.
Let her give it away.
Do you want to give it away? Yes, you can give it to anybody. There you go. All right. Great Patterson.
Is it on?
It is on.
Okay, it's on. Politically active Christians, PAC, or also known as Idaho True Conservatives, ITC. They are like a huge engine that is trying to develop understanding of the election process and help shedding light on how important that is, and then also reaching your neighbors. Thank you. Reaching your neighbors and helping them understand this election process. So they also are looking at candidates, conservative candidates, helping to vet them and also support them once they have recommended. They were instrumental in our school districts in particular. For instance, in Lake Ponderay School District, they had one very conservative candidate they were able to get in. They also do workshops on how to knock on doors, as well as putting together these packets. And Ed Patterson, my husband, has also been a speaker helping to shed light on how to door knock. They've also in our school district, West Bonner County School District, we have 3 conservatives that we've been able to get on because of them and the door knocking. That they also jump in and help everybody. Anything else? Let's see. They produced an app that you can put on your smartphone, which has a map that shows you the Republicans in your neighborhood that you can go to. You have information like their names, and you can introduce yourself and introduce any information that you would like to share with them. Like, for instance, they have ballot and recommendations for what's going to be on the ballot. And at the bottom it says, visit BonnerVotes.org, and that's the website you can go to find out more about them. And also over here, there's a lot of these that you can pick up that will help you in your voting. Any questions?
I'm not going to do questions on this so we can speed through, but we can visit her at that table. She's on that side there.
Thank you very much.
All right. Sheriff Wheeler. All the way in the back probably wants you to use a microphone. So this is our sheriff. You are still the sheriff
Oh, I am. It's my
of
turn.
Bonner County.
I don't, can you hear me or should I use this?
There you go.
I want to use this. Okay, I'll use this. I want to introduce myself. I am the Christian Taliban constitutional sheriff, out of control in defense of the U.S. and state constitution. I said earlier, you were so fortunate to have District 2 Commissioner. Right, I got that right.
Yes.
We have, it's, some of you, if you've been following local politics, I've had a few bumps in the road since January, since the new commissioners took office with the two male commissioners. But we're going to just stand up for the truth and stand up for what you want. I want to tell you that my number one priority when I come in here is public safety. And I make known to the commissioners because statutorily they are the ones that have oversight on my budget. So let me just start with asking a couple questions. Who has seen an increase in population in Bonner County? Okay. Who has seen an increase in traffic? Okay. Who has seen an increase in crime? Okay. Well, I make those things known. In last year's budget process, and we're going to be doing this starting in July again. In 2022, we had an increase of 250% of fatal accidents in Bonner County. Last year, I made a request. Public safety is my number one priority. We need a designated increase of my budget so I can have a traffic enforcement officer respond to the different areas. And that was denied. We have an increase of sexual assaults and sex crimes in Bonner County. Not per capita, but per county. Bonner County, has more filings for sex offenses. We're number 3 of the state of Idaho. We are investigating and prosecuting more sex offenders more than Ada County, if you can believe that. I put in a request last year. We need help, we need resources so that we can investigate and not have a burden on the investigators that are doing all these other crimes. That was denied. We are just seeing an uptick. I just want to just share, last night, we had, up until midnight, we had 5 deputies working in Bonner County, and then at midnight, someone who was working overtime left. And so we had 4 deputies covering almost 2,000 square miles. We had officers, we had deputies responding to shots fired inside a home. Once they got there was a woman fighting with her boyfriend who was trying to commit suicide. When they pulled up to the house, shots were being fired. These are the kind of things that your deputies are enduring and responding to on a daily and nightly basis. We need help. The heroism, the dedication to the deputies that are working in your county are just extremely high, and I'm just so proud of what they do to keep this county safe. And it's my commitment, and I will continuing to let that word be known to the commissioners during this budget crisis that we're in. We have a goal in the next few years because of the population. The 114-year-old courthouse that was remodeled several years ago at a tune of $6 million doesn't even have enough courtrooms for the judges that we are housing and conducting court cases in the county. We are going to have a need in the future well beyond when I'm gone as your sheriff, and we need to plan in the future, and that's why I have been fighting so hard to make sure that the property, that original 20 acres that is at the sheriff's complex stays intact, so the next sheriff that takes over when I'm gone and the counties have a good vision on what they need to do to react and to prepare for the growth of this county. We're going to continue, as you've heard the theme here, we are a bastion of liberty. We are so blessed to live in Bonner County and North Idaho that we need to keep this a free county, and we need to plan for the expansion of the growth of the county. So I'm just telling you, I'm dedicated to that end until I leave office.
Well, actually, also you went on vacation and now we're back to that piece of land So we will be there on Tuesday to argue for the same piece of land to maintain it, because a decision was made to designate that piece of land as only an RV campground, which removed it from its ability to even be the parking lot. So that happened on Thursday, so it will come back on the agenda again on Tuesday. But I'd like you to address, which I know in our area, a lot of our concern is increased drug issues in Spirit Valley, and maybe touch on the fentanyl topic.
Sure. I can tell you some of the, last year, 2022, we only had about 9 fentanyl overdose deaths. So when you look comparatively to Spokane County, 2022 in Spokane County had 179 fentanyl overdose deaths. We have a fentanyl problem, and as what Senator Hart said, I'm going to tell you the root of this fentanyl problem is the southern border. And I have been saying that for years. If we do not close that border down, we are going to kill the society. We have the drug cartels, the Mexican drug cartels, operating in Spokane right now. We have an influx of fentanyl and heroin and marijuana coming into our region because the border is open. We are making fentanyl arrests every week and sometimes nightly of people with fentanyl and drugs. And I agree, and I hope I can agree with Senator Hart. We have to continue to be more conservative, and the legislature has to continue to put their foot down and say they will never legalize medical marijuana or recreational marijuana, because if they do that in our state, then our state will be lost to the drug culture. We have to remain the last state and never legalize drugs in our state, because we are surrounded in every corner, surrounded by this, except for Utah, that they have medical marijuana in Utah now. And they're growing it, and they're harvesting it, and they're selling it on the black market here. So I just tell you, that is a big, big problem, and we are addressing it. We're prosecuting, I know, 2 cases in our county, in Bonner County, with the feds on providing fentanyl to victims who overdosed. And those cases are going forward very soon. But it's a very big problem, and you need to tell your commissioners that law enforcement needs their funding so that they can keep this county safe. And I'm committed to that. What was the other? Responding to all of these calls. As I said last night, we had 4 deputies. We also had a sexual assault that took 2 deputies that they had to do an investigation, interview people. And when you've got 2 deputies working on one priority call, and then you've got the other 2 deputies, we have to lean on either Priest River, we have to lean on Idaho State Police, which they came and took 2 traffic collisions that were in the unincorporated part of the county, because we are just so underfunded and understaffed. I want to say, if you look at our Facebook, we'll probably be putting it out. I want as many people at our budget hearings when we have it. I want the people of the county to come and tell the commissioners, what's going on, what you're experiencing, the high crime, the high influx of people and people from out of the state that are clogging our roadways, and we need to be protected. And so the first budget hearings are going to be in July. It's going to be probably the first week of July, and Mike Rosedale.
Week 3 and 4 of July.
Week 3 and 4 of July, and I will be posting that on my Facebook. And I'm just encouraging you to support Asia Williams, your commissioner, because we have 2 other commissioners that are deaf on what this county needs. They've got some agenda, and I don't know, for some reason they don't want me. But anyway, I guess that's good, because if I keep standing up and doing the right thing, then there's a book that says you're going to be persecuted. So hey, okay, I guess it's a blessing.
So you're gonna quit going on vacation now, Darryl?
Pardon me?
You gonna quit going on
Oh,
vacation?
yeah. And as somebody said, I went to Kentucky. If anyone has ever seen the Noah's Ark, and been there. I urge you to go to that Creation Museum. You gotta do that. But I'm not sure if I'll return to Kentucky, because you can't go anywhere that accepts cash. I mean, it's terrible. We gotta get that legislation that they have these businesses accept cash. But anyway, yes, in the back.
Yeah, hi. So we're one of the, well, we're actually the only state that disallows hemp that has 0.3% THC. It needs to be 0.00001, percent THC. And hemp is a very medicinal plant. And I know several people that take a product called hemp paste. And so you're getting all the cannabinoids, all the CBD oils, and it's very good for cancer. And when you're around wireless in this wireless environment, the smart city stuff, most people have insomnia. It's like really bad in the city. So they find it's the only thing they can do to alleviate it, but it's illegal for them to actually have it in the state. Is there anyone, I mean, would you be opposed to 0.3% in a product like all other 49? I'm against recreational and, like high THC. I'm opposed to that. But this product is different, and, people that, there's a lot of people that take it, but it's technically illegal.
So the legislature authorized the growing of hemp in the state of Idaho, and it's the way that's described, it is below 0.00 or 0.03% THC. So I'm not opposed to them manufacturing hemp. When you look at it, what they're doing in Canada, it's a very wonderful crop. I mean, you can do so many things, clothing and hemp seeds and all that stuff. So I'm not opposed to it. I'm just telling you, I'm opposed to legalizing recreational and medicinal marijuana.
I'm about all of
Yes.
that. I just wanted to make sure, because I don't think that law was ever.
It was passed, yes.
It was passed.
Yes, it was. It was, I think it was passed 2 years ago.
You can go on the agricultural website, and it talks about the permitting process and what it takes to do it.
But it's 0.3%.
It's 0.3 or below, it's a federal standard, so.
Right.
Thank you.
My name is Todd Sudik. For those of you who don't know me,
Todd Sudik. He got in my country, voice doesn't carry.
I was a former commissioner and worked with Darrell. And I can't overemphasize the issue of the new courthouse. Nobody wants to spend money, but we're wasting money on a building that is falling apart, whether it's the HVAC system or the lack of room for additional judges. It needs to be replaced. It should have been replaced when we had an opportunity to sell it years ago. The property that is out by the jail, between the jail and the fairgrounds, in our minds, when I was commissioner, was there for one purpose, and that was for expansion of the jail and or the courthouse. And there's reasons why it's necessary to put it there. One, we own the property, so we won't have to go out and buy property. And two, it's convenient to the jail for transportation of prisoners for hearing. The criticality of this issue cannot be overemphasized. We need to retain that property at the county level for law enforcement. And I've spoken on this before, and I want to emphasize this to those of you who are in this room and to the rest of the folks in this county, that when people start throwing out numbers in terms of spending money to build a courthouse, it just has to happen. I don't like to spend money, but this just has to happen. So keep that in mind when that issue comes up. I think that we need to make the bonding, if that's necessary, to go out there and build a new courthouse on that property. To give it away as an RV park, literally give it away, doesn't make any sense.
Do you report the deaths on Highway 41 and 95 and 2 to the Department of Transportation and to our legislatures? Because we need highway funds to widen those roads and put passing lanes in on Highway 2 and make Highway 95 4-lane to the border, and we're not getting the money, and we need it. And so reporting the deaths and pointing out to our legislators and the governor and the Department of Transportation that they're responsible for those deaths because they have not done this. Would you please report that data to the people?
Those reports are made and are sent to the legislature via Idaho Department of Transportation and the Idaho State Police in a year-end report.
We need to do it first.
So, yes, I mean, I can do it.
Yeah.
I'm the manager at the Easy Stop, and if anybody sees drugs being sold or used on my premises, I have 16 cameras. Let me know. Call me up, and I'll get the information over to the sheriff myself, okay? Because I don't want the drugs in my county either.
Yes, thank you.
One more question back there.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to say, I like the way you think, okay? The other thing is, in light of what you're talking about, the other two commissioners, have you heard any suggestion or rumblings about making the sheriff's position appointed rather than elected?
No, there's no talk. There is legislation in other states that allows that, but no, not here in Idaho.
They tried that in Kootenai.
Yeah, they tried it. I mean, there's a section where they can expand into 5 members. They can get a county administrator, and there are certain positions that they can, by statute, change. But it takes a supermajority of the county to approve that. And I can tell you, both in Kootenai County and Bonner County, there's no appetite to see that on the ballot. So I don't think that's going to happen. You want to answer these questions? Or?
Let those people get an answer from you after, because we are running far
Oh, you
behind.
bet.
I can see people are getting ready to leave.
Okay.
All right? All right, thank you, Sheriff Wheeler. This is not Bob Howard.
Hi there, everybody. My name's Cameron Lacombe. I'm actually the Planning and Preparedness Coordinator for Bonner County Emergency Management. My expectation was to be sitting in the audience today with you. Something last minute came up with Bob Howard. He's the Director of Bonner County Emergency Management. So he's not here today, hence me. So on top of that, I also have to now follow the sheriff. This is a tough act to follow here. Also, just an observation. Oh, thank you, Commissioner Williams, Sheriff Wheeler, and the elected officials. One of the observations, just the unified Pledge of Allegiance at the start of this. It's humbling to be here. So, anyway, so emergency management. I'll just try and be brief. I started right at the end of December for Bonner County Emergency Management. It's the two of us, if you will. There's the director, Bob Howard, and myself. Anyway, so I'm a bit new to the role, if you will, and was thinking initially talking about kind of the technical aspects of emergency management, but that didn't seem necessarily a tangible, something tangible that would translate very well. I asked Bob Howard for some insight. His remarks or his words were community resilience and county resilience. So that took a moment for me to just kind of think about that, and that really kind of struck a tone with me, really more about what you and I are. So we are prepared, we are strong and independent, we're mindful and responsive to the needs of our community and our neighbors within it. We adapt and overcome to challenges we're faced with. We in Bonner County are resilient. So with that in mind, Bonner County Emergency Management works with the citizens, first responders, commissioners, and other officials to provide assets and resources and partnerships within the community there. We encourage enhancing your own skill sets, situational awareness, networking through volunteer groups. We actually have we refer to them as VIPER, it's volunteers and preparedness and response. If you're interested in radio communications, we have a group called ARES, Amateur Radio Emergency Service. If you're interested in helping out in your community in time of a disaster, we have a group that's called CERT, Community Emergency Response Team. If you're interested in coordinating with ARES, CERT, and emergency management, we have a civil support group that works in conjunction with all of those. Let's see, another point if you feel that your church could be a resource to be of some help in the community, let's see, we have Rick. Rick in the back is with 7B Cares. He's coordinating several churches, 10, 12? Yeah, 10 to 12 churches to be a resource, combine resources and work together in times of any sort of disaster. So certainly reach out to Rick. We have a small table back there. Another thing is if you're considering creating a defensible space around your home against wildfires, we have a bonfire program. I don't know if Nick is still here. Oh, there he is, back in the corner. That's something else that we've got a program that might be a resource or be of some help in regards to that. I wanted to at least again thank everyone for being here. This is really a special event. It's an honor to be here and to be speaking with you today. Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a brief break so that we can allow people that have to leave to sketch out of here. But I wanted to also give an opportunity for Senator Hart and Representative Hawkins, if you guys want to connect, if you need something. Any questions that you guys have for a second? Oh, Hawkins has a follow-up for you.
So, just so you know, I'm technically challenged, so I wasn't sitting here scrolling through Facebook. I was actually, who was it that asked the question about like natural gas, power, those things? So it's House Bill 106. It took me that long to find it. It did pass, and it restrains cities and local municipalities from creating rules that limit what kind of energy can be brought in to a development or an area. So it opens it so that we can keep the gas on. So
I wanted to address Gal's comment up here about transportation funding and spending. So the legislature appropriates the money, and it's appropriated in the Department of Transportation. And then there's a transportation board. I think there's 7 members of the board, and they each represent a region of the state. And the board is the one who decides which project gets how much money and what the schedule is. We have a very sophisticated system of design and bringing projects up to the top of the list and spending money. But if the legislature had to decide how to spend that money, it would be endless battles in the legislature over this project versus that project. And this way is thought to be more efficient. Yes.
Okay, when I first moved here, there was a problem with 95. And Governor Kempthorne vetoed how many legislations until the money was done for 95. And I had long conversations. I had long conversations with Dean Cameron about 95 and the 4-lane. Some of that got done, and it needs to be done again. 41 is a mess, it's treacherous, and it's dangerous. 95 is the same way. You have some input to that board, sir, and you need to be doing something about this. And I appreciate what you're saying. Thank
Okay,
you.
well, you would be more productive to direct your comments to your board member from North Idaho, because he's the one that actually makes that decision.
Thank you.
and they got $200 extra million.
And we didn't get any.
No, it hasn't been dispersed throughout the area.
We haven't gotten it. We won't.
Anybody else want a regular question with these two before they leave?
We passed funding policy, the governor, that's all executive branch stuff. Yeah.
Please take up some food, please. I can't come back to my house.
Yeah, but, yes, you're correct, that we have a voice, but every accident on the highway isn't because of the highway.
For a prize, raise your hand. Who said that? Okay. 2020 is correct. So, for those that may not know, the 102 fire created an interesting incident here in Blanchard area. Number one, the power was out for 3 days. Cell phone coverage was out for 3 days plus. And at least our water anyway on the supplied water ran out after day 2. After that fire, some of us came together and decided that the Blanchard area needed a means of communication for emergencies, whether it's weather-related, fire-related, personal, and utilize radios and other forms of communication to augment people's needs to communicate. I'll turn this over to David Hensley, but we have 5 net controllers who control our network. And out of those 5 net controllers, they're also involved in areas that Bonner County Emergency Management talked about, amateur radio emergency services through Bonner County Emergency Management. Quite a few of our members are volunteers for that organization. Quite a few of our folks are also volunteers for CERT. I don't know about CSG, but there's a means to communicate up and there's a means to communicate down within the county. If you look over at our table there, you'll see a little display of one of our members' portable battery-powered communication methods. If called upon or deployed, we can go anywhere, set up in minutes anywhere, and talk around the world on HF or talk locally through FRS, GMRS Channel 3, which is what we use. With that, I'll turn it over to David.
Well, hello, and thank you for sticking around. Again, my name is Dave. That's Mike and Don's back there. We're the original founding members of the Blanchard Area Radio Group. And again, it was because of the 102 fire. We had no power, no water, no means of communication. And evacuation orders were coming sparsely and far and few in between. And there was other breakdowns in other areas. So we decided that we would get together and form a group, and we use radios. We use radios to talk to each other. This is actually a Yaesu. This is a much more expensive radio. Now, people have been asked, well, I just want to listen to the fire department. That's great. All you need is just a little scanner like this. A little analog scanner. You can listen to fire, you can listen to police, you can listen to whoever you want to. No license required. And come fire season, I've got one of these on my desk, I've got one in my truck, and I've got one in my back pocket. I take it everywhere I go. Because when it comes to fires, we know how quickly the 102 fires spread and what little time we had to get out. So our group, we use radios to communicate with each other. And most people say, well, I've got a cell phone. Well, when cell towers went out, we couldn't talk to each other. When internet went out, we couldn't text each other. And we were out in the field with the fire crews. We were coordinating evacuations in Blanchard before anybody else was even thinking about evacuations. So radios, they're cheap, they're inexpensive, not this one. But some radios need a license to use, some radios you don't. And our group, we emphasize radios where you do not need a license to participate. And we have radios back there you can look at, and we can talk to you, we can help you get established, we can help you get radios in your house, we can help you put antennas on your roof to increase your coverage. But we are ham radio operators, we have our license. But again, we encourage the public to use radios where a license is not required or a minimal license is required. If you're interested in alternative forms of communication when everything else takes a dump, please come see us, come talk to us. We're here, we'll answer your questions, we'll show you the neat toys we have. And again, just an alternative form of communication, all right? Again, come back, talk to us, look at our table, look at what we have, take a brochure, We get on the air every Sunday night, we chit chat with each other. And, person meetings again?
We start back up on our monthly meetings at the local Blanchard Grange in June, which is what, Sunday? Second Sunday of each month.
Okay, so if you're at the second Sunday of each month, we'll have our in-person meeting at the Blanchard Grange Hall. At that point, sometimes we can program radios, we can advise you, we can show you how things work. We can get you involved in the radio however you want to, as little as you want to, or as much as you want to. And like Mike said, some of our members can deploy out in the field and establish emergency communication with the county when all else fails. And I think we can also talk to each other. All right, so that's our spiel. If you have any information, if you have questions.
We have flyers back there for additional information or contact information if you're interested. Also, there's no dues, there's no membership. We do have a little application that basically says, how do we get a hold of you in case of an emergency? How do you want us to get a hold of you?
What channel?
Because we use an app on smartphones called Signal. Anybody's heard of that? So we use Signal, we use radios, and we use email in order to convey information. Whatever that information is when it pertains to public safety.
Oh, one great question because what frequencies do we use? We use FRS or GMRS channel 3, which is Family Radio Service, or General Mobile Radio Service. And we use channel 3 as our primary frequency. Anybody can tune in and listen to us. Anybody can tune in and chat with us every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on FRS GMRS channel 3.
All right, thank you. Up next, we have EMS, but this is not Chief Lindsay. So in our area, we had a discussion a couple years ago about whether or not Spirit Valley or just this region in Southwest Water County needed an emergency service team down here permanently. And so we're going to kind of do a little bit of discussion on the issues, the calls, and where we are right now.
All right, good afternoon. First of all, thank you, Commissioner Williams, for putting this together, inviting us. It's an honor to be up here with at least we're a bunch of elected guys. We're sitting, still a big deal. I am Captain Mark Croft. A lot of the stuff I'm going to tell you today is going to be educated guesses, and if I don't know something, I'm not going to make it up. As a lot of you guys are aware of, just like the Commissioner stated, we are exploring the opportunity to put a full-time station somewhere down here in the Blanchard area, serve not only the current citizens that are here, but also the anticipated growth of citizens. I know there's some questions. It's really all I've got because I didn't know I was doing this until last night, right before the crappy meeting. You watched it. Anyway, if there's any questions, fire them. I'll give you educated guesses. And like I said, if I don't know, I absolutely won't sit here and be his. Right there, sir.
Let's assume that we're going to put an EMS thing here. What would it cost to do that, and how would it be serviced, and what would be the benefit of us who live here if there were a medical emergency?
Okay.
What difference is it going to make?
Okay. So I can't talk about cost not because it's a secret, but because as a captain, I just manage crews. I don't manage budget or anything else. I am a budget line item. So I can't talk about cost. Crews, as far as crews go, what it's going to do, the big thing it's going to do here is it will greatly decrease the amount of time it takes to get a paramedic and an ambulance to your house. I unfortunately don't have many opportunities to respond over to the Spirit Valley area. Yeah, I don't have any opportunities to respond over here. I'm stuck in town as the ship captain. But today when I drove from Priest River with my lieutenant, when I drove from Priest River over to here, which is where, are we kind of in the semi-center of Blanchard? I guess it's the gas station, the center.
Yeah, but our valley goes to the left a little bit.
Exactly, right? Exactly, it absolutely does. So right now, you guys are served with ambulance in Priest River, and an ambulance in Spirit Lake, and a paramedic fly car in Priest River. So it takes anywhere from 15 to 25 minutes, and this is per the chief of Spirit Lake, who I had a good conversation with, Chief Carpenter. Right, Carpenter? Who I had a good conversation with this morning about this. So 15 to 25 minutes, depending on where you live. And obviously I'm talking about generalities, I'm not talking about your driveway. And then it takes our paramedic 15 to 25 minutes. And then we've got to take that Spirit Lake ambulance most of the time and transport either to Newport or down to Cooley Health. So what that does from the Spirit Lake standpoint, not that we're talking about Spirit Lake, it's part of Cooley County, but from a Spirit Lake standpoint, what that does is that takes that ambulance out of service for a prolonged amount of time. For us, it just takes our single paramedic out of service for a prolonged amount of time. We still have a paramedic ambulance in Priest River. The rest of the county, the rest of the rural county, for the most part, is getting an ambulance with a paramedic within 15 minutes. So from a response time, this area is really underserved as far as the ambulance goes from a response time. There's a ILS kind of intermediate ambulance service through Spirit Lake Fire Department. They do an excellent job at intermediates, and our paramedics are well trained. That being said, I want them to get to your place. Someone asked me, so what's the difference between the response that you get on the other side of the county and the response you get down here? And I said, well, it's about 10 to 15 minutes. They said, and what's the difference? Or what difference does that make? And I said, it makes all the difference. Because if you've suffered something serious, cardiac arrest, a stroke, those kinds of things, minutes really do matter. The helicopter can only fly so often. Just because of weather anomalies, maintenance, etc. We're lucky to have a great partnership with Lifeline, but not always available. I hope that answered your question, sir.
Is there a location already picked for this, this EMS station?
There is currently a proposed location. I know that the commissioners are vetting the contractor, the folks that have that. As far as the specific location, I don't know that. I know it is in the greater Blanchard. There's someone that can address that.
I'll expand that though, because it's not specific to Blanchard anymore. So it used to be Blanchard on a specific land developer's land. That's not what we're talking about. What Chief Lindsay is looking at is the entire area, which actually includes, would it be better service to have an EMS station off of like Bay Road to be more central to southwest Bonner County, so not just Spirit Valley, but going farther in to see if that would be a better option. But as we grow as a community, the infrastructure service of not just roads, but emergency services. So there's not a piece of land that's being vetted. It's, are we hitting the increased call volume that requires us to take a look at whether or not we should be looking into an EMS station, or should we be looking into like volunteer firefighters in our area? What is it that we should be focusing on to make sure we're taking care of the health and well-being of the residents of this rural part of the county? So we're not buying a piece of land. We're exploring the idea and looking at the map as a whole of where we need to move.
And I appreciate, thank you, Commissioner, I appreciate that. Please think of EMS, fire, police, think of us more as infrastructure versus anything else, because that's really what we are. We are simply just another utility to make life, just like your drinking water, right? Make life safer, a little bit easier. Can I answer any more questions?
She's good. She'll follow up with you later.
Okay, excellent. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for your time.
All right, next up is 7B Cares. Come on down. You are the next speaker of the Spirit Valley Town Hall.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Rick Linsky with 7B Cares, and I'm one of the partnership organizations that Cameron had talked about with Bonner County. We're an Idaho nonprofit association, and our mission is to unify the churches in case of disasters and emergencies. And we recognize as a church, as Christians, we're called to serve our neighbor in times of need. And what we do is to unify the churches, because Bonner County has upwards of over 50 churches just in Bonner County alone. imagine the resources that are available if we unify those resources and whether it's volunteers or church resources, and do it. We're not there to debate doctrine and things like that. We come together every month and say, what can we do to help serve our neighbor? And we currently have 11 churches that are participating, and it's all about preparing for times of disasters. It's difficult to imagine a disaster here, but what disasters would you think happen annually here? Typically in Bonner County, wildfires. So we train on helping people to mitigate their land in wildfires. We have several resources. We're resource linked. We have several links on our website that help people do that. We have go bags. How to create a go bag in case of an emergency if you're a first responder. Summer, winter, things like that. How to create a go bag and what to put in it. We have several sites like that. How to make a plan for you individually, because it's you individually that's going to help, but you through your churches, if your church is a part of this, how do we prepare you? How do we prepare your church? Then we're preparing our county by uniting, determining what our capabilities and resources are collectively. And so that's what we're doing now. One of those things is wildfires, as I mentioned. One of our partnership churches, Priest River Community Church, opened up a shelter. And so we're trained on how to open up shelters and how to get churches to open up shelters. Not every church is going to be able to do that. But Priest River doesn't have the volume of volunteers to be able to staff that 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. That's where small churches can come into play. It's like, I want to go over and help Priest River Community Church and help them. So that's the unifying part. Forget the denomination for a moment. We're just helping each other and each other's churches. And that's what we're designed to do. And so now, nationally, how many railroad accidents have happened in the last few weeks? Just in towns just like Bonner County, counties just like Bonner County. How do we prepare for that? So that's what a lot of us are doing, are preparing for how do we help as an organization, how do we help as a church, how do we help individually. So I would like to have more churches, now that we're done organizationally, we're training, we would like to have more participation of all 55 churches or so in the county, and we'd be happy to have you come and take a look at us. There's a QR code for those. For those who like QR codes, for those, I have a website. Go on our website. I have business cards and flyers back there with my phone number and email address on there. Any questions?
Do you have a list of your participating churches on your website?
On the website and on the flyers, yes, I do. There's one other one that I haven't added yet because I'm waiting for their information to add. So, yes. Any other questions?
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So before People's Rights speaks, I'm going to give a plug for our assessor. If you won the lottery and your property will be assessed and you're in that 20% group, you will receive a letter wherein they are asking your permission to come onto your property. They will not be coming onto your property without your permission. If you decline, they will be then sending you out information on how they're going to assess your properties. So I had that discussion because in our area that has been a point of contention with the assessors coming onto our property. Even when we threw out 1,000 signs and pictures of 1,000 AR-15s, we still somehow got assessed. He wanted me to make sure I communicated that to you. This was scheduled when he was already out of town, but they are sending out respectful letters for your right as a property owner to not be trespassed. So, with that being said, People's Rights brought to you by Kristen Dunn. If you have a question, you can a question. If you can think of a question, I can give advice.
Oh. Okay. Oh, now you tell me. I just have to think of something on the fly. Okay, I'll think about it. While I'm going through, maybe I'll think of something. Okay, my name is Kristen Dunn. I'm gonna try to find a way to give you guys a prize from Asia. I'm here representing People's Rights. People's Rights is a grassroots network of people. It's not an official organization. However, we do have a secure, independent website, peoplesrights.org. The People's Rights Network was started back in early 2020 after the governor declared the state of emergency and started shutting businesses down, telling us who's important and who's not. And so we, the people, many of us came together, and there's many different areas, we call them areas, of people's rights that are operating autonomously. When I got involved, I went to the very first meeting for North Idaho. Originally, it was the five most northern counties in Idaho, and now we've split off as we've grown, and so now my area is Area 1 North, which encompasses Boundary and Bonner counties. And we have about 560 people who are signed up on the network. And the whole purpose is to stand and unite as we the people in defense of our families, our neighbors, our faith, and our rights. And so, during COVID, during lockdowns, we were protesting, and just as individuals protesting, going to businesses and going places and just saying, look, I don't have to wear a mask because you tell me to wear a mask. I don't have to get a vaccine because you tell me to get a vaccine. I mean, a lot of this stuff has come out. Many of our legislators have gotten behind a lot of the things that we, the people, as a network and at the grassroots level, have been trying to do on an individual level. But the network itself, our website, so I'm an area assistant. What that means, I'm basically a gatekeeper to the people who have signed up. I'm a gatekeeper to the information. It's not shared with anybody else. It's a secure network. And if there is somebody in the network who has their rights being violated in some way or another, they can reach out to one of the area assistants, and we can send out a message to the entire area and ask your neighbors to stand in defense of your rights. And so, of course, it's much easier to defend yourself when you have others standing with you and you're not just standing alone. And we meet once a month. We meet, right now, I'm trying to get a little bit more involvement and try to branch out into some of these other areas of the counties and get Boundary County a little bit more involved. But right now we've been meeting in Ponderay. We meet at the Ponderay Event Center on the third Wednesday of the month from 6 to 8 p.m. And we usually have some kind of guest speaker. We're not just about doing the calls to action, if you will, that's part of it, but the other part of it is education and supporting local food resources. And so we always encourage everyone to come and do a plug for their ranch or farm that they have going on, or maybe a local business that's liberty-minded that respects our bodily autonomy and respects our liberties. And so we want to continue to support those businesses and put the other businesses out of business, quite frankly. But we want to try to stay positive and just really support those that are honoring liberty, individual liberty. And so some of our guest speakers have been to do like a workshop or educational purposes. We do stuff regarding food preparation or alternative energy. We also support some of these other groups, like 7B Cares. I need to get with you, actually, and probably have them come do a guest speaker appearance at one of our meetings. We also have done, I always encourage all of our members or neighbors, if you will, to be more engaged in their community government, their local community government. I did kind of a panel Q&A with several of our county elected officials not too long ago, and it was like a civics course. We're nonpartisan, so we're not a political organization, but one of the ways that we can defend our rights as individuals and as neighbors is by electing good, liberty-minded people into our local government. So that's something I always encourage. If there's anybody local that is getting ready to run for an office, we always welcome them to come and speak and introduce themselves. So anyway, I'm going to look at my little list that I made, make sure I'm not forgetting anything. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, please let me know. Really, it's about building community and becoming a family, because those that you know well are the ones that you're going to be quick to stand up in defense of. So that's why I encourage everybody to come to every meeting every month, even if it's not a topic that you're necessarily interested in, just to come and build those relationships with your neighbors. And we also encourage neighbor organized defense groups that are, you know, your own little get together with your neighbors. If there's an emergency, maybe there's a fire, you know, any kind of thing that you would need to stand and unite together on, you need to organize, you need to plan, and the people that live closest to you are going to be the ones that are going to be able to do that with you. So we encourage that. We call them NODs, Neighbor Organized Defense Groups. Another thing that we are big on is the medical freedom groups and medical freedom movement. And so we have had some of our local medical providers that have gone independent. We have people that are starting up their own companies that are doing concierge services. We also promote, which Dodie's going to get up here in a minute, talk about Make Americans Free Again. I always encourage everybody to go to her meetings. So we're just really trying to build that community and connect all the good groups that are going on. Everybody's kind of got their own little niche, and so we can, you know, one group can't do it all. So I want to I always encourage everybody to come and bring their announcements about events coming up, and if you're a business owner, to come bring your cards and network. Another big thing that we focus on too is parental rights and fighting against the CPS monster that's out there that's invading our homes on a regular basis and stealing our children, and really being active and compliant in child trafficking. And so we have a couple of cases that have come up recently. Baby Cyrus, if anybody's familiar with that situation, where the mother just decided not to go to one of her baby's doctor's appointments, and this was down in the Boise area. And the medical provider of the hospital reported that they had missed their appointment, and the next thing you know, they're surrounded by police, and she got arrested, and the baby was taken, and People's Rights stood up down there and united and stood and said, we're not leaving until you give this baby back to her mother. And that's kind of what we do.
I'm going to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have a question. So it's a little story problem. If you can pay your taxes in 2 payments, your first payment is due December 20th, your second is due June 20th. You choose not to pay it in a lump sum, but you want to make both payments. You don't pay your second half by June 20th. When does interest start accruing? Okay, all you that go to these meetings know. We literally were all in the meeting where this came up.
In December. May, for the very first date of the tax session.
You were at the meeting. That's the wrong answer. All the way back to January. So you are front-loaded your interest from January, February, March, April, May, June on your next missed payment. So our treasurer wants to make sure that if you are going to have difficulty paying that second half, that you actually reach out so that you can reduce what that interest could be if there was a hardship, or pay as much as you can, because you're going to be front-loaded with the 6 months, because it was technically due on that December payment, but they allowed you to split it in 2 payments, which a lot of people did not know. There's also a late fee associated, but that doesn't matter once you add up all that interest. So, with that being said,
I just want to let everybody know that you can sign up at peoplesrights.org. Also, you can text the word rights to 80123 if you'd like to become part of our network. So I just wanted to throw that out there. There's also cards back on the table as well. So thank you.
thank you. All right, we are getting into the nuts and bolts of what maybe some of you are. And we have Panhandle Health District in the back. They're going to talk to us about some of the services that they offer. One of the things I wanted the Director Duffy to also comment on is the services that we have for our aging population. Bonner County has a lot of aging adults who actually need services, but here in Blanchard, we also have a lot of people that, we're about 70% of a retired community down here. So there's a lot that Panhandle Health has to offer. We also recognize Panhandle Health is also managing the septic, and they're getting comments from the files that commissioners are sending down for comment and review. So they're going to present some information to us as we bleed into speaking with Norm. I had to make him late because I know some people wanted to speak to him directly, so I need people more on stage. So with that being said, here's Director Duffy with Panhandle Health.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Williams. I really appreciate this event. I hope this is happening all over our wonderful country. This is just wonderful that you have an opportunity to hear from your elected officials. Is that better? Okay. I kind of want to wipe or something with this right now. Public health, right? But welcome, and we appreciate the speakers that spoke to us today. Sheriff Wheeler sits on our Regional Behavioral Health Board. In the back, we've got former Bonner County Commissioner Glenn Bailey. He sits on our Board of Health and is a wonderful advocate for the people here in Bonner County regarding public health. So I'm going to just give you a real quick kind of Reader's Digest condensed version of what we do, but I really want to hear from all of you and hear any questions that you have. There are essentially 3 different services that we provide at Panhandle Health District. We have clinical services, which we have essentially doctor's offices in all of our 5 counties. Panhandle Health District represents the 5 northern counties here in Idaho. And that also includes epidemiology, or the study and investigation of disease. We then have our environmental health services, which I think maybe many of you may be interested in. That has to do with water, it has to do with septic tanks, it has to do with the what I call the unseen jewel of North Idaho, and that's our Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer. 500,000 people drink from that aquifer. We're so proud to be a part of protecting that for all of us. And then also we have our health, we call our health services, and that's all different kinds of programs. One of those are our senior companion program, and Dan's going to talk to you a little bit about that. That particular part of our program is really growing in the area of opioid use disorder, which you heard about earlier, and fentanyl. It is a crisis. It's beyond a crisis. Right now, Panhandle Health District was given grant money from what's called the opioid settlement funds. And in fact, here locally, here at Spirit Lake PD, they made an application for $4,000 on their work relating to opioid use disorder, and we approved that, and they should be getting a check here within a week, so they can use that for their efforts. So that's just kind of a brief rundown. The health district, we run on a budget of around $13 million a year. 89% of that money comes from grants and fees. Only 19% of that comes from the counties, and that's about $2.5 million that we pull from all 5 counties to support Panhandle Health District. The state, back in 1970, when they created health districts, they did something that I thought was very efficient. In most states, every county has a health district. So they have a director and all of that support. And in the state of Idaho, we only have 7 districts in the entire state, and we represent multiple counties, as I talked to you before. So I'm going to stop right there. What questions might you have that I could answer regarding Panhandle Health? Yes, sir.
How is the health of the aquifer?
We've been measuring the aquifer for 100 years. And in 100 years, we have seen no drop in no degradation of that water. And even more amazing than that, we've seen no drop in the volume of water. You think about all the people that have come to this area, and it continues to produce hundreds and thousands of gallons of great water. In fact, this aquifer is one of the few aquifers in the world that you could drink directly from it. And that's why I call it the unseen jewel of North Idaho. Now, that does not mean we should be complacent regarding that aquifer. We all know the growth that's happening. I've been here raised all 6 of my kids. I've been here since 1989. I have seen this growth. We need to be aware of it. We need to continue to protect it. Great question.
How do you monitor it? What's the process?
Yeah, so there's actually wells that we go down and we just pull water samples out of that. And we can see both the levels and the quality of the water.
Is that like all over the state or in just?
No, this just here, the majority of the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer is in Kootenai County with a little finger of it coming up here north into Bonner County. I expect that the other aquifers are also being tested just like we are. Please, sir.
So why is the aquifer not being depleted?
Boy, I wish I was a hydrologist. I might be able to answer that for you. You know, that we get so much from what we call recharge areas. You know, it's obviously it's initially fed. I don't know how many of you know the history. I could spend hours talking about the history of the aquifer, but essentially through Lake Pend Oreille, but also through all of the recharge areas that are feeding it. And it just, I don't mind telling you, I think it's God-given. I think it's incredible what it's doing. But that's not a good answer for you. Other questions, please.
So the Snake River aquifer, that has an issue in there trying to get that recharged. So in line with saying that we would want to protect it or to keep it pure or our jewel, you know, in Kootenai County, it used to be back in the 90s that you had to have 10 acres in order to build on it because that was how they protected the aquifer. That was changed and then they went down to 5s, and then after 5s they decided that the nitrate levels in the soil were too high. So they said something needs to be done about it, and a sewer system was put into Post Falls specifically because that's where I grew up. So in this area with all of the division of the land and whatnot, what changed from the 5-acre lot, or the 5 acres with your septic, having those nitrate levels being too high? What says that doesn't happen here? So, I mean, in line with protecting our aquifer, what are we looking at here?
The 5-acre rule is still in place. So what that means is, if you want to, for a septic tank, you can only have one septic tank every 5 acres over the aquifer. That remains. That has not changed.
Wasn't it
There's a clarification that I think you're trying to route to get to. It's that Bonner County isn't following the 5-acre minimum over the road, but Kootenai County is. That is an issue that Bonner County as a body needs to address, because that was one of the topics.
Yeah, Commissioner Williams and I have been discussing that. Should that 5-acre rule be extended here into Bonner County? And we...
Yes, one of the discussions was we may only be a small part of it, but we're at the top of it, and the impact. And when I look at it, we've been measuring it for 100 years, but it's not 100 years of this type of impact. So we won't see this impact for years later. And so it's worth it, and that's why I had a meeting with the director for us to look at the aquifer, because we won't know until it's too late, and we are not observing the 5-acre minimum build over the aquifer.
Right.
But Kootenai County is, that there is a difference. They are doing it, but we're not in our aquifer.
Thank you.
I live on San Souci, a lake, and every year the water looks ugly. It looks like somebody pours oil into it. Now, we have an individual that owns the sewer system, the water system, the golf course, who has a track record of not paying bills. And I'm wondering, what do you guys do to monitor the quality of the water in the lake and the sewer system to protect those of us who live there?
Great, that's a big question. We're in that particular process. It's not just Panhandle Health District. We work closely with the Department of Environmental Quality as well on those particular issues. And so, what I would suggest to any one of you, if you have a question about what a neighbor might be doing, or if you feel like their septic tank is failing, you need to contact us. Now, we are not going to be showing up on private property to check this out. We're going to reach out to the individual that might be allowing some of that affluent to spill out. But you need to call us, and we'd be happy to look into that. On that particular one is John, right? You know, we talked a little bit. I think that I gave you my card, and reach out to me. We can assess whether that's a Panhandle Health District responsibility or the Department of Environmental Quality. We have a close relationship with them, and we would be happy to investigate that. I've got more cards here for you if others of you have some questions about that.
Can we move to letting him give his presentation?
Okay.
Because you're both at the same organization.
So I'll stick around if you have other questions, and I'm going to turn the time over to Dan.
Commissioner Williams. Good afternoon. It's good to be here. As you've already been told and you're already aware, there's a growing population in North Idaho, including Spirit Valley. 12% of those that are moving into this region are over the age of 65 years. You won't find this group at the Conoco Corner doing drugs. They're not in parades. They're not out there protesting. They're not on side corner streets with placards asking for anything. The group of people I'm referring to are socially isolated, homebound seniors. If I were to do a poll in here, you might know some folks who are neighbors, even relatives or friends that are in that situation. Limited resources, no friends, no family, socially isolated, not able to get to their medical appointments, not able to go shopping. They're just in their homes. They have the window shades drawn, and many of them feel like they just need to pull the covers over their head. Well, the Senior Companions Program of North Idaho helps mitigate that. A National Academy Science Survey of 2020 tells us that social isolation and these lack of communication, engagement with the community, increases public health issues. It raises the increase of stroke, heart disease, depression, suicide, and dementia, just being socially isolated. So the Senior Companions Program of North Idaho has volunteers that go into the homes of our clients once or twice a week. We visit with them for 2 to 4 hours each visit, and we provide transportation to their medical appointments and grocery store shopping as needed. The unique thing about our program is that it pays our volunteers a stipend, a reimbursement. They're reimbursed for their time and they're reimbursed for their mileage. One of the very few programs that provides volunteers kind of pay. This pay is actually non-taxable. It's non-reportable. We receive this from a federal grant. And so I have volunteers that give of their time, give back to the community to minister to seniors who are homebound and isolated, and some receive $200 a month, $300 a month. I have volunteers that receive $700 a month in stipend money that's non-taxable. It's just based upon the number of hours they're serving and the number of clients that they're seeing, number of miles that they're driving. But this Senior Companions Program is making a real impact and meeting a great need that's only going to continue to grow in our community, North Idaho. With the population increasing, I'm looking out at a number of baby boomers here, I think, that we're all getting a little bit older. How many of you are over 65? Raise your hand. Uh-huh. And for those of you that didn't raise your hand, you're going to be there sooner than you think. And this program helps. It helps our relatives. I can't tell you how many phone calls I receive from elderly clients who are completely isolated, no family, no friends, neighbors don't check on them, and they're just crying on the telephone, wanting someone to come and spend time with them and be with them. I have a lot of data, a lot of statistics I could share with you, even some testimonials about what the clients receive from our program and how this really benefits our volunteers. But rather than do that, I'd rather take any questions you might have about the Senior Companions Program. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any proof that there's a drug dealing happening at Conoco Corners?
I do not.
Then would you like to retract your statement?
I was mentioned for seniors. I didn't think that seniors were. Okay, let's clarify. I don't think that people 65 and older are down at the Conoco Corner selling drugs. My opinion.
All right, well, thank you. I can tell you I've got to hear a lot of the testimonials of actually not just the recipients, but the volunteers. So if there are people that have the time to volunteer, it is.
So we support local businesses. Up here in more rural areas, you're great at homeschooling. A lot of areas, suburban areas don't. So even Pam says, get your kids out of school, like Heather Scott had said. So she provides homeschooling resources. I'm sorry, go back to, you can join makeamericansfree.com for free. It's a secure site. She has her own servers, and it's a 501(c) to donate to this organization. And the other part of her is lawsuits and activism. She has filed the first lawsuit against, I forgot the organization, I'll get back to it. But Dr. Paul Thomas, a pediatrician in Oregon, lost his license because he told the truth in his research on vaccines. So this organization is now supporting him, fighting for him. They filed a lawsuit. Actually, they've reversed some of the doctors that have lost their licenses because of COVID. So one of the things, I am a nurse. You don't have to be a nurse to have one of these organizations. You can start them in your home. I have a sign-up sheet over there if you want to get my email on our meetings. One of the things I just want to stress to people, the thing that we need to be aware of is they need to treat the symptoms. Do not treat the label. Quit calling it COVID. That's the fear porn that they have sent to us. I just recently got really sick. There's a new organization called Hope Health in Sandpoint. Heart of Hope Health is in Hayden. These are new organizations like the independent practitioners that are coming up. We support them. Make Americans Free Again supports them legally, and we need to help them. We need to get away from traditional health care. Bonner General is doing a terrible job. And if you have to go, have someone advocate for you. It's critical. So our goal is for to fight medical tyranny, to get the support you need. These organizations and Kristen's here, they're called tribes. You take care of each other. If you know your neighbors, you know who are the ones that are isolated. If there are windows, you haven't seen them, check on them. That was one of the things that was critical during COVID. When we were all shut down, we needed to check on each other. So these rural communities, you're great, but it's not over. So if you please join us, we need to keep fighting. It's a battle that they keep coming back with new things. They got us under the fear porn of COVID, and the testing, they're not approved. They're only emergency use. So everybody's had a corona, a cold. That'll show up in your test. Have the doctor or whoever treat your symptoms. That's what we need, and we will get better. Stick with your tribes. You guys are doing a great job, and I will help anybody start their own organization. Like I said, I've been doing this for 2 years, and I never thought it would last 2 years, but look, like people's rights, we have to keep going and stick together. Thank you.
Also a nurse, so she knows more than the average person about what she's talking about. Up next is going to be tactical homeopathy. And one of the things that has increased in our community is an interest in naturopath medicine and homeopathy. And so they've been going around Bonner County. They're extremely shy, so make sure you embarrass them. There you go.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Sarah, and this is Abigail, and we are Tactical Homeopathy. Some of you may be wondering what homeopathy is. Homeopathy is an over 200-year-old, highly effective, safe system of medicine. There we go. Using homeopathic remedies which are prepared in a specialized way. It was the first medical system created using the scientific process. The first recorded mass placebo study was conducted at the American Institute of Homeopathy World Congress in 1885, over 40 years before conventional medicine. Homeopathy is used widely around the world. It was once neck to neck with conventional medicine here in the U.S., with nearly the same number of hospitals and schools until the invention of patented pharmaceutical drugs. In fact, the only monument to a doctor in Washington, D.C. is of Samuel Hahnemann, who is the founder of homeopathy. So both Abigail and I discovered homeopathy when we were each searching for something more powerful and natural. We both grew up using herbs, essential oils, supplements, diets, but we found that wasn't always enough. And there were always scary things to worry about, like anaphylaxis. We wouldn't know how to deal with that. So because of the early success we had early on with using homeopathy, We both decided to learn a lot more and went to an online academy where we met each other, and that's how we started Tactical Homeopathy.
So within a decade of homeopathy arriving in the United States, the Domestic Physician was published, and that's a handbook that was written for families. It sold for $5 along with a kit of about 40 remedies. It was known as the book in box. It was widely used and so effective that, in the hands of mothers, that the doctors were complaining that it was taking away their business. And so we believe homeopathy is the medicine for the times that we live in today. Homeopathy is fairly easy to learn how to use effectively. For many conditions, it's inexpensive, and when it's stored correctly, there's no known expiration date. People have used remedies that are over 100 years old with success. It's also as powerful as a painkiller, does not become less effective like an antibiotic does. It's not addictive. So learning homeopathy can make you more prepared and confident in caring for your family's illnesses. It's curative, doesn't make you dependent, so when you're better, you stop the medicine. We currently teach a first aid preparedness class, and soon we'll be offering a 6-week homeopathic foundational class. We'll also begin offering kits sometime in the summer, hopefully. And we have our website, tacticalhomeopathy.com, where you can look. We have a resource list. We have a list of top remedies to own and how to put your kit together, things like that. Recommended books and websites. Thank you.
All right, up next,
Just real quick, my wife lost a ring off of her finger. It's silver, a little flat band wraps around. If anybody sees it, appreciate it.
silver ring slipped off her finger. Did we keep you here that long that your finger lost weight?
She had a piece of cake.
All right, next is going to be Norm Semenko. He is an attorney that we have used in Bonner County frequently. The disclaimer is he's not going to be able to address a legal case in this venue. But what his specialty has been for our area is water. So I asked him to kind of give a discussion with our group because it's not a never-ending resource, but it is one that in our particular area we have a lot of concern about. He is the go-to attorney with respect to water in North Idaho. So without ado, thank you for coming, and here's Norm.
Thank you, Anisha. So my name is Norm Semenko, and for those that do want to talk about whatever, I'll be here till 2:15-ish. Even after we break up, I'll be here. I've got a meeting in Spirit Lake at 2:30 with some of you, but so I am an attorney, but more importantly, I'm a proud graduate, 1978, Spirit Lake Elementary. My friend Mike Healy and I rode our bicycles, no hands, down the hill from Spirit Lake to Blanchard. That's pretty much all I know about Blanchard, is that I rode my bike there when I was a kid, because it was in the other county, and the kids in Priest River were weird, and we battled with them twice a year, every year to figure out who was the worst boys basketball team in the state of Idaho between Lakeland and Priest River. So, couple things that I'm not going to talk about, but if you want to talk about with me afterwards, I'm happy to talk to you. One is what Heather mentioned about the Priest Lake legislation, which was all about not allowing the Idaho Department of Fish and Game to use off-budget money to put a siphon in the lake. Successful legislation by her and Senator Herndon. Happy to talk about that if folks want to talk about it. The second thing I want to talk about is the adjudication to the south of here, the Coeur d'Alene, Spokane River Basin adjudication that's still going on, and in particular the hundreds of federal claims to our water that still need to be resolved down there. What I am going to talk about is the adjudication here that we've been talking about in one form or another for at least 15 years, the Clark Fork Pend Oreille Basin adjudication. So how many of you have filed claims in the adjudication? All right. How many of you have wells and have not filed claims in the adjudication? Not very many, so I don't need to go into that spiel. Yeah.
Is adjudication the same as water rights?
Yeah, so the adjudication is a process which has happened throughout almost all of the state by now. There are 98 numbered hydrologic basins in the state. The two up here are 96 and 97. That's the Clark Fork Pondere Basin adjudication. So everybody who has a water right that has historically used water for 100 years, who's had a permit from the Department of Water Resources for the last 10 years to actually use water. So don't get confused with, I've got a stream going through my property and I might want to use that someday, I'm going to claim a water right. No, that's a permit for a new water right. You need to go see the Department of Water Resources. But for established water rights, you file claims in this adjudication, yeah.
So, like on my property, I have a well and I also have a cistern that is actually fed by a stream. So when I went to file for my water rights, I filed for both. And they, of course, questioned my cistern, but the cistern was actually plumbed into the house back in 1964. So we were still able to get our rights back on that.
So if we're on a spring house, instead of a well, is it the same thing as being on a well?
Yeah, so if you've been using the spring since at least 1971, or you have a permit or a license for that, then you have an established water right. And yes, you want to file a claim, whether it's surface water or groundwater, you want to file a claim in the adjudication. If your right's newer than that, or you don't have a piece of paper that shows that you have a water right, you really need to talk to the Department of Water Resources about getting a water right. And the good news is, you're in North Idaho. This isn't Southern Idaho. You can still get water rights granted. Priority date matters, and I don't want to go into a long discussion about that in terms of how old your water right is, but it's not as important, particularly if you're not at least back to 1977 with groundwater. So, how many people have been here since 1978? Wow, few. So, when I rode my bike, no hands, there was no traffic on Highway 41. It was paved, but there wasn't much traffic back then. All right, so in this adjudication, everybody files their claims. The deadline's pretty much all come and gone. You can still file claims if you want to, late. It's not hard to file a late claim. The Department of Water Resources will investigate all these claims. They'll start issuing what are called director's reports or recommendations to the court. They're going to get a hold of all of you before they do that and say, here's what we think your water right looks like. What do you think? And they're happy to talk to you. Department of Water Resources is not the most difficult government agency to deal with. And then eventually it will be reported to the court, the adjudication court, which just happens to be headquartered in Twin Falls, but the case is in Bonner County. If you have no problems with that, it's going to get decreed and you're going to get a piece of paper in the mail. Not unlike the deed to your property, you're going to have a piece of paper, a decree from a court that says this is your water right. It's kind of nice to have that to be able to show you have a water right. Okay? That's what's going to happen with the vast majority of these. You're not going to see these reports coming out till, they say 2024. I think it's going to be more like 2025 in Basin 97, which is Priest River, Priest Lake side of things. If you're over in Basin 96, you may not see anything until as late as 2030. It just takes time to go through this whole process. What I really want to mention as I wrap up is, embedded in all of this is a requirement that if the federal government thinks it has claims to water in this area, they have to file claims. Thankfully, there are only 24 claims filed by the federal government. They were due March 3rd of this year. 15 of them are BLM claims for things you'd expect, like stock water on stock watering reserves and cabin sites on Priest Lake, basically. Those aren't really of much concern. Then there are 9 that have been filed by the Forest Service. And of those, there are a couple that are for basically the entire flow of the basin in undefined areas for undefined purposes. And we've seen these in other parts of the state. And eventually, the state will object to those. Local water users who are concerned, local folks who know about this, will object, and it will be sorted out. But there are other parts of the state where large federal claims have been filed that very much threaten the communities. And these are not things that they had to go into the department and file a claim for. These are things that under federal law, there's a legal doctrine that allows them to file a claim and say, wherever there's federal land was set aside for a specific purpose, in this case, parts of the Panhandle National Forest, where that was done, Congress meant for a certain amount of water to be reserved, carved out of the system for that purpose. It could be an Indian reservation, it could be a forest reserve, it can be all kinds of things. So folks will start diving into that. People will start figuring out if, for example, could these claims have an impact on Priest Lake or on Lake Pend Oreille, the governor's water right for both of those lakes. It's meant to preserve those lakes in place for all the people of the state of Idaho. If you have a senior right downstream of those lakes that commands water to come out of the lake, that would be a concern, right? So stay tuned for that. We'll see how that goes. I think Attorney General Labrador is pretty on top of this, and will make sure that the state files objections to those federal claims, and then there will be those of us that have been watching this for a while who will participate in that process too. That's pretty much what I wanted to share with you. Again, I will be here to answer questions if people have issues, specific ones in particular that not everybody else wants to hear about. Yeah.
Hopefully this is easy enough for you. A couple of weeks ago, I was coming out of the county building, and a guy stopped me and he says, I'm telling everybody I can tell. All you have to do to get your water rights is go to Coeur d'Alene to the Department of Water Resources building next to the Social Security office. Go in, talk to them, 30 minutes later you'll walk out with a paper in your hand for your water rights. I can't verify that. How about you tell me?
So I agree with all that except the last part. You're not going to walk out there with the water right in your hands. But the answer to most questions about what do I do about my water rights is contact the Idaho Department of Water Resources, make an appointment and go in and see them. And what's going to happen is you're going to sit down with the agent, you're going to tell them your situation, and they're either going to say, yep, you need to file a claim because you've got this use and it's been there this long, or, you know, I looked it up on the computer, because they can look it right up on your legal description, and boom, there's a water right. What you may walk out with is a copy of a claim that you just filed in the adjudication, or a receipt for that. You may walk out with that. The other thing that can happen, and it's also very valuable, is you sit down with them and say, you've been using that water out of Lake Pend Oreille since 1988, but you don't have a water right because you need to file for a permit. And here's the application for permit, fill that out, bring it back and pay the fee, whatever it is, and it'll go through the advertising in the paper and nobody protests it, you'll get that permit granted. You won't have to go through the adjudication because it's a newer water right, but that's really valuable for folks that don't know that they need a water right and they've been using water for a long time. So one of those two things can happen, and there's been a huge increase in the number of water rights applied for because of the adjudication of people thinking they had a water right, went in to file a claim and being told actually you need to file a permit to get a new water right. You don't have an existing water right.
So it's gotten a lot easier over the last few years than it used to be, right?
Well, there's more awareness because of the adjudication. It's not easier. It's the same process. There's just a lot more awareness now because of the adjudication.
So there are areas that have not chosen to go through the adjudication process, and folks that, I know that doesn't necessarily apply here, but like maybe up in Boundary County, for example. So if somebody owns property and their area has not gone through the adjudication process, that doesn't mean they don't have water rights on their own property. It just means, right, am I getting this correct?
You're correct.
That in the event of a dispute, then you would have to go to court and kind of duke that out, whereas the adjudication process is kind of duking it out on the front end instead of on the back end. Do I kind of have that correct?
Yeah, so Basin 98, the Kootenai River Basin, is the only basin hydrologic unit in the state that will not have been adjudicated. It doesn't mean they don't have water rights. There are large water rights on the Kootenai River. The way it works is what I talked about, where you go in and you get a water right from the department, you get a permit granted. That gives you the opportunity, like a permit to go hunt the bear. It doesn't guarantee you a bear, but it gives you the opportunity to bag the bear. You bag the bear, you tag it. Same with this. This gives you an opportunity to develop the water for whatever the permit said you can do it for. In this case, it's been out there for a while, so it's easy to show the department, hey, I've done this. And then they grant what's called a license. And when the license is granted, that is final, that is your water rate. Now, if an adjudication comes along, you need to file your water rate claim and say, look, I've got a license, and it's gonna be easy to get your water rate decreed because it's already been confirmed with the license. So there's a lot of those license rights up there in the Kootenai Basin. There's nothing that prevent people from showing that they have water rights or in the department's records. You can look it up. It just hasn't been adjudicated. It hasn't had that court stamp on it, but the department has confirmed it. What's hard are these, I've been using water out there since 1958, and it's never been, there's never been a permit filed because permits weren't required back then. There's no license issued. So that decree becomes really valuable because then you confirm the use in a decree. That's some of what they have up there, that there's no piece of paper to prove that. The other part of adjudication that has proven to be valuable is these latent federal claims that are just floating out there, and the federal government claims they have the right to this water. They're forced to come into adjudication. You don't get to sue the king without the king's permission, right? You don't. How many of you have successfully sued the United States government? If you're in an if you're in an adjudication, Congress has waived sovereign immunity and forced them to come into the adjudication in a state court in Idaho, requires them to file their claims, whatever they are, with the deadline, and then the court decides if they have or don't have what they think they have. And in most cases, they take a pretty huge haircut from what they think they have. A lot of times things are negotiated out. Well, that cloud's maybe not a big cloud in Boundary County and the Kootenai River Basin, but there's a little bit of a cloud that'll still be there, that'll be resolved in all other parts of the state. We're going through that in Coeur d'Alene right now. It's painful, but they're going to be resolved. So I hope that helps.
One of the things that our community has addressed a question on is this water rights requirement really a step towards the government wanting to put meters on individual wells? Because I know that has come up with some people where, and there's benefits to actually looking at what wells are producing, but that's been a question that I've been asked is that really the direction that we're going?
Yeah, is this just a precursor to doing something dramatic? So for those of you that like to read statutes, read Idaho Code Section 7-701. 7-701. The Department of Water Resources already has full authority to require anybody to put a measuring device on any water diversion that he wants to at any time. He doesn't do it very often, but that authority already exists, and it's not dependent on adjudication. So that's number one. If you want a black helicopter, look for it in 7701, because that's where it's at. Number two, if you think that the Department of Water Resources doesn't know where your well is already, no. There are such, every time, have you ever dealt with a well driller? Well driller pulls a well permit, and there's a tag, there's a log, a well drilling log. All that's in the department's records. All that's filed with the department. So they don't need adjudication to know what your wells, where your wells are. There's no nefarious purpose right now. I can't tell you what a director or a governor or a legislature might want to do 10 or 15 or 20 years from now, but adjudication is not a precursor or requirement, from my experience, to do anything other than to know where people's water rates are, and if there's a need for active administration of water rights during times of shortage, which I don't know that that'll ever happen here, but it happens in Southern Idaho. You cannot administer something that you don't understand and isn't defined. So the department have a catalog of all the water rights. They know during times of shortage that if they need to shut off the junior rights, which is what our Constitution requires, that's a little easier to do, and they can put them in organized water districts after they're adjudicated. I don't know if that'll be a big issue up here. Yeah.
What if you're on a community well?
What if you're on a community well? Who owns the community well? Whoever owns a community well has to file the claim. It's like if you're in a city and it's a city-owned system, or you're in an irrigation district like East Green Acres Irrigation District, although that's a bad example because the Bureau of Reclamation actually owns that. The entity that owns the overall water right that serves the community, they file the claim. You don't need to worry about filing the claim.
Mine's not water like that water, our water around here. I just wanted to know, and I get a lot of people that still come through the gas station asking about the smelter. Is that done, gone away?
So the smelter has been built. We're talking about the Newport smelter.
Yes.
The smelter has been built in Tennessee. So I don't think it's coming. I think it's coming here.
Thank you for your hard work on that and other various things, cafe, the RV park, all the other things.
You bet. And I'm happy to talk about any of those things and any other things you have when we adjourn here. My time is up for sure.
For sure. Oh, just a really short thing. Okay, so two things. One is, if we live next door to the Forest Service, and we've been there since 1978, and we did fill out our water right, but have nothing back, which from what I heard, you said we won't get anything till 2025.
Are you in base 97?
Pardon me?
97?
No, we're in Bonner County.
But by Priest or by Ponderay, which close? Which
We're a third of the way up. We're by the Falls Tavern at 8.5 miles.
Yeah, you're probably not gonna see anything till later this decade, but you shouldn't have heard
He said
anything back
later,
yet.
like it was gonna be this
There have been 7,000 claims filed in those two basins, and they have preliminarily investigated 134 of them. So they have to go through all of that. They're gonna evaluate it, then they're gonna contact you with what's called a preliminary recommendation or a notice of error process, where you can look at it and say, yeah, this is great, or no, I think there's a mistake. You're gonna get a chance to talk to the department, and then they will issue the recommendation to the court, and you decide if you like it or need to object. Vast majority of these, I know there's gonna be like 2024 or 2025 or beyond, when you get that recommendation, the director's report, it's mailed to you, and there's an objection period on that. After that objection period's over and nobody's objected because you're the only one that cares and they did it right, 120 days later, the court has a hearing on all of the unobjected to water rights and says, all right, I'm granting all of these, and then they'll mail you a decree. So it's gonna be a while out, but the fact you're not hearing anything is actually good. If they're investigating your claim and they have questions, like, you said that you've been doing this since 1952, we're seeing a tax record for this house here in 1958. Do you have more evidence to support the earlier date? And you'll probably say, well, that was just what I heard, but if that's what you have, then 58 is good enough. You know, that kind of contact maybe from the department you're gonna see here in the next couple of years.
So we're not gonna have to worry about the fence because they own the property next door.
They're gonna file their own stuff, and I would care, but the Attorney General's gonna object to all of that, and like I said, there's gonna be, if you're interested in that, let me know, but there's some groups that are focused on being involved in it. The other thing I will tell you is the department should be able to help you. If things get complicated, swirly, they're not doing what you think they should do, don't call a lawyer. I mean, you can, but you want to talk to somebody like Brian Donkey back here, because a water rate consultant can really help you with, here's what the department's trying to figure out. It's a technical issue usually. And then only as a last resort, if you're into, I gotta file an objection or whatever, then you worry about having a lawyer. But it's gonna be less than 1% of you that have that. And I can say that with confidence because in the Coeur d'Alene adjudication, it's literally been less than 1% who have had contested subcases that had to go through the court system. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not gonna ask a question to get rid of some of this stuff. Who is our Attorney General? You guys failed. Yes, you're right, but technically, one answer, one hit, or you guys can pass a document around. There, she. Who is this Lieutenant Governor?
Oh, man.
Don't ask your mom, I saw that. That doesn't count.
Isn't it Scott Becky now?
Yes.
Good job.
Do I give you a gift for each time you love me for your mom? Here, now you don't have to buy her a gift, it's right here. It's Mother's Day coming up. All right, the next one is the hard topic. So, West Bonner County School District is requesting a levy. So the purpose of this is for us to share information to understand the issue, the concerns. There are some confines on how it can be answered. However, Keith has agreed to do his best to help us with the request for the levy and the school board as a whole. So we'll take questions, but please be kind, all
I
right?
have a question.
No, you
If I
have
said
reached the
no,
maximum, you have reached your maximum level, and for Redoubt News, they must turn the camera off at this point. Yes, sir.
Yes.
He hasn't even started yet.
Are we asking questions to Mr. Roosevelt?
He's gone.
Mr. Rosedale left the building.
I mean,
Keith Rutledge?
Council.
Oh, yes, you can ask questions, but he's gonna give us kind of an overview of what's happening and what's coming up. And then you may ask a question, and he has to use his best judgment as a member of the school board to give an answer.
Well, he's got a list of them already, so. Of questions.
Gotcha. So for clarity, the entire school board was invited, they did notice it, I did speak to Margaret, they had an opportunity to all come to represent kind of both sides or different perspectives based on their discretion. But Keith is the one who volunteered to help our community understand, so he has to come out of the gate with a big thank you from our district.
Good afternoon. Again, I'm Keith Rutledge. I'm the chairman of the board. I have some bullet items here that I was going to talk about. One, that we did adopt a 5-year strategic plan to increase test scores, overall running of the school district. We did adopt a 4-day work week to help with the implementing of the 5-year plan. If you don't review a plan on a regular basis, what good's the plan? So the 4-day work week was adapted for one of those reasons. The other thing was teacher retention. It's an unpaid, or it's a benefit that doesn't cost the district anything. My workplace, we went to a 4-day work week, and that helps with retention. We also adopted a quantum learning. That's to help build the standardization with teaching from kindergarten to 12th grade. I won't go into details about that. If you want more details, contact me later. Those were all the positive things we're working on. We also have a new curriculum committee that is more cross-functional, and it now, for the first time, has 2 board members on it, and has more community input. We are also in the process of a new superintendent search. For those of you who don't know, Jackie Branham left the school district back in March, has it been? Days are flying together. So we're in a new superintendent search. And as you know, we're running a levy. For those of you who don't know, the levy is $4.7 million. Okay.
Per year.
What's that?
Per year.
Per year, thank you. $4.7 million per year. Okay, per year, we're asking $464,000 for co-curricular and extracurricular activities. School resource officer is $73,000. Salaries, of the $4.7 million, $3.1 million is going to salaries. Safety and security of facility improvements is $366,000, and bus acquisitions. They replace 1 bus a year at the tune of $120,000. Okay, so they have 14 buses on their in their garage. So every year they replace 1 bus. They do that for a variety of reasons: depreciation, age, those kind of things. So that's why they're replacing the bus. Now, I've heard a lot of questions, a lot of concerns about the recent legislation. Okay, why are we running a levy because of the recent legislation? Well, the levy was decided on to run back in March. Recent legislation ended when? Or just last week?
Yeah, legislative session, is that what you mean?
Yeah, okay, so there was legislation passed to fund teachers. Now, I haven't read all of the legislation. I don't even know how it's gonna affect our district. So, there's a lot of information on both sides of the aisle. Okay, for the levy and against the levy. What I highly suggest you do is look at everything, okay? I'm not dodging questions, it's just where I'm at with it, okay? What is the basis for the need for how much the levy is on the ballot for? Okay, why has the board nor the committee been given anything about this basis? Okay, for the first time, well, I can say for the first time, the basis, when we ask for a budget meeting, typically in the past, last year, the budget came to us, and we had literally 20 minutes to look at it and vote on it. Okay, this year, we said, we're gonna do a deep dive. We did exactly that. We've met probably a dozen times since January, just on the budget alone. Now, when you and I talk about budgets, we look at how much money comes in, we set a family budget, and said, okay, this is what we can spend. When we get a budget on the board, it's not just what's coming in, but what they think they need to, it's a, for lack of a better word, a Christmas wish list. Okay? It's a Christmas wish list. Okay? So the board has to then determine what projects, what programs are going to be on the levy. So if you notice, this levy has $3.1 million in salaries. Well, what did the district get funded with in the last 2 years? COVID money. So what are some of the positions that those are going to be, that the levy is going to pay for? Are positions that were created with COVID dollars are now being passed on to the levy because they're not funded from the state. The state legislation doesn't fund those positions. That is, again, what the district is asking us to pay for.
Wasn't there a levy in place when you were getting that COVID money?
Yes, there was a levy in place. This is a continuation of a past levy.
And that's all right.
Okay. The other questions. With one teacher per every 12.5 students, is it true that West Bonner County 83 is going to be hiring 5 more teachers? I can tell you right now, if the levy passes, there's still a $1.4 million shortfall, and there's going to be cuts. Okay. So where that's coming from, I have no idea. Okay, from the board level, that hasn't crossed our desk. Okay. Have you or any other board members received any pushback from looking into the West Bonner County financials? Expand if applicable. I have not had any problems. It depends on what you ask and how you ask for it. Depends, you can ask for one thing and they give you something else or misinterpret what you ask for. As far as outright denial, no, there hasn't been any outright denial of information.
Can I ask you a question on your COVID comment? You said that we created positions in our school that were not supported. So why did we do that, and why not just cut all those positions since that's the bulk of the money? Because I could see their eyes all roll with that comment with me, because I wasn't aware of that either. So why did we create something that wasn't funded by the state that we could continue? That's one of the questions that I see at a lot of the levels of government of, this is not income that you could maintain, that you can count on. But when we made those positions, was it transparent to the community that when COVID money falls off, that the community will have to pay for positions that were created that were not deemed necessary until we got COVID money? So why, we can't just drop those positions off? What kind of positions were they?
We could drop them off. That would be the logical thing, but they deemed them as necessary. Remember the budget process? Okay, the wish list, those were deemed as necessary positions. Okay, that the previous board is the one that presented or created those positions with COVID money. because this is what the district says we gotta have. We either fund these or we don't. That's part of the decision. That's the decision-making process as a community that we have to make.
Can you explain for the community how it works when a prior board, because you're a new board member, and so you are inheriting some issues from a prior board, but you're also limited in response after a decision is made to move forward with the levy, correct?
Correct. Okay. Past board decisions, I can't do anything about. Okay. Current board decisions, okay. When a board votes to do this, to run this levy, doesn't matter how I feel. My vote no longer counts. I'm here to represent the board, okay? And what I'm saying is this is what the board decided. Whether you like it or not, that's your decision, okay? As a board member, as a matter of ethics, I have to uphold what the board decides. Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell us how the vote went before, when you were deciding it?
I don't think it's relevant at this point.
It is.
Oh, it always is.
It is relevant. Can you tell us who voted which way?
Well,
Is it on the public record?
yes,
All right, because I didn't see that.
it should be the notes.
You can go to the minutes. You can come to me, I can sign.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got it?
Do we have any other questions for the school board?
Yes.
All right, so certain positions were created with the COVID money. I know that's not $4.7 million worth of positions.
Correct.
I also know that of the $3.1 million that was set aside for teachers, that's probably not all covered by this bill that recently passed at the legislature. So I don't know if you can guess or not, but how much of this 4.7 million would be including those two things I just mentioned, and how much of it is for other things like sports and?
I just read that off. That's the
Okay, but.
$464,000 is for athletics. The 3.1 million, okay, let's be clear. That $3.1 million is not just for COVID positions or positions created during COVID. The state has a funding model, okay? The funding model, last year's funding model, allowed for 62 FTEs, or what we call full-time equivalents, okay? They paid for that. West Broward County has 80-something, 84, I believe, okay? Going into next year, they switched from average or enrollment-based to average daily attendance. The new FTE equivalent is going to be 57. So, state's going to pay for 57 full-time equivalents. We have 84, 82 or 84, I can't remember, 80-something. So, that levy makes up that difference. So, you can argue, are they necessary? Everyone's arguing that. Okay, so again, when the school district comes from a board level, we don't get into nuts and bolts. We don't get into day-to-day activity of the school district. The only one that answers to us from a board level in the district is the superintendent. The superintendent works for the board. The superintendent then runs the day-to-day operations of the district. I don't have access or the ability to go in on a day-to-day basis to run the district. That's their job. Now, from a board level, we can make a decision. Okay, no, that's not what we're going to do, and then they have to adjust. Again, that's what they came to us with. That's what they wanted. That's what's on the levy. So that's how that $3.1 million came up. The other thing is our starting pay for a hourly employee jobs. We haven't for several years for just cleaning jobs. Bus drivers, same thing. We're not the only district. It's statewide, it's countrywide. So that's that portion of it, yes.
How about teachers' pay versus in our county or this area versus other areas around it?
Okay, good question. The question was is how about teachers' pay for this area versus other areas? There's some, I would say that we're fairly competitive with teachers around our area. If this levy passes, we'll be within 10%. We'll be at the top tier or competitive with other districts. Yes.
Kind of a follow-up to that. What is the average teacher salary versus the average resident salary in the district? Do you know that information?
The average, it's higher, okay, but there's caveats.
The Constitution, family, so on and so forth, because what I'm reading is around this country, that is being destroyed into critical race theory. You know, are we being taught that if you were born of a certain color, that you are not good, in fact you're evil? Whatever color that happens to be. But the focus is on the color of the skin rather than the content of the character. And you know, what we're teaching in public schools is very important. I mean, I watch television and I see commercials for HIV drugs all the time. Well, why do we have it? Well, because we have an HIV problem. Why do we have it? It's because we have morals that have been undermined in this country. And it happens in the education. I went to the meeting there because Jackie was proposing classic curriculum.
Correct.
Which basically is good for the Constitution. And we seem to be losing that. We don't even want to say pledge of allegiance in schools, at least in a lot of schools. Please address these issues.
Okay.
We never seem to say anything about it.
What the teachers are teaching in schools as far as sexual orientation and those things, I've not heard of anything bad being taught in our schools. As far as curriculum, CRT,
Did you find that?
perverted lifestyle. Okay. I don't know how
They have same-sex bathrooms.
we do not have same-sex bathrooms. I've been to all the schools. I can attest there are not same-sex bathrooms. Okay. I heard at one time that there was a push to get same-sex bathrooms, and that has since gone away. Okay. As far as curriculum, CRT, the board back, I don't know, January, February, the old curriculum committee came to the board and wanted new English literature arts curriculum. So no problem with it, we voted it, and found out later that it had SEL, it was full SEL. So the board reconvened after a whole lot of activity. We rescinded that because of the SEL. And what happened because of that is now we formed a new curriculum committee, so that won't happen again. Okay, so it's a battle, and that's where the battle lines are drawn. So anything that happens, we also revamped our library content policy as well, and that's still being worked on. So to answer your questions, those are the things we're working on.
Will they be resolved so that we don't no longer have perversion and pornography in our schools?
Yes. Yes. It's in process. Maureen.
Yes, and as I think there is a new policy that's coming, the next board meeting, on sexual orientation, gender identity, to protect our school district from that. And
Yes.
This would be one day, but I think at least the Constitution is being taught. I don't know about the
Can you hear her? Yes, okay. Ann just reminded me that we did have a Constitution Day. I think several schools went all week. They had Constitution Week. And they had, also they had veterans in and those kind of things, but they taught the Constitution all week in some schools. And then, but at least one day there was emphasized on the Constitution. So,
And the other question I had was about if the levy is voted down, when would it be? Would it be back up in August? And how many teachers would we lose between May and August because they didn't know whether or not they have a job?
I can't say when the levy will be put back on. I'm not going to commit to that.
So we would probably lose a number of teachers if it's voted.
More than likely. But I'm not going to commit to whenever the levy is going to be rerun.
Can I direct you not straight to Kristen, only because this,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Dodie has
I'm
her
sorry.
hand up and she hasn't asked a question yet.
You said that if the levy doesn't pass, they're probably gonna lose some teachers, but if the levy passes, we're still gonna lose some teachers.
We're going to lose something. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. Is there any,
So just a follow-up, so if we lose teachers, it's my understanding currently that we already have a higher, or I should say a lower student to teacher ratio
Correct.
than the average,
Correct.
than surrounding areas. So if we were to lose some teachers, it would probably put us back in line with with that average ratio, student to teacher ratio, would it
correct.
not?
Yes. Senator Kathy.
Okay, I'm sorry, I have to speak up. I appreciate all that you do, keep working on me, and I appreciate that.
Okay, here comes the bad news.
But one of the things that has really frustrated me in this process of putting.
I'm gonna pause you because you're talking too low and they all.
One of the things that has really frustrated me in this whole process of how they're presenting the levy to us as if it's necessary is that they have not shown us a basis of what we need to support the fact that they're giving us a $4.7 million levy. And without that basis, nobody can make an informed decision on what it is. I mean, the board was not given that, we're not given that, and it's inappropriate for them to decide that we've got to have this because we say so.
Yeah, where'd they get the numbers? That was about bypassing you so that he can speak and then you can respond to both.
I just have one question, quick question, two parts. Can you hear me or? No?
Microphone.
You can't hear me? Okay. My first question is regarding the bus situation, the buses. You said that they were replaced once a year and that it at a cost of $120,000, correct?
Correct.
And you said there were 14 in the fleet?
Correct.
Are all 14 in that fleet used daily, or are those backups, or?
There are two backups right now because they only have 12 active bus routes. I could be wrong, at least 16 in that. And they use a couple for spare parts or backups.
Okay, and the second part of that question is, when the old buses are retired, what is the outcome of them? Where do they go? Are they sold for any income?
What they do with the old program that Obama started because they wanted to get rid of old vehicles off the road is they buy them and then they render them inoperable.
So there is some income from?
Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
The state of Idaho just said that they're going to increase funding 16.8%. I haven't heard the school board mention any of that. And there's a $6,300 9-month pay raise
Correct.
coming.
Correct.
And how's this work in? Has this been figured into the levy?
hasn't been, okay, the question was, did everyone hear this gentleman's question?
Yes.
Okay, just as I stated before, the legislative session ended after we had already, the board had already decided to run the levy. So we have virtually we've not crunched the numbers to see how the net effect of the legislation is on the current levy. Does that make sense? Okay. Yes?
I don't think it's deniable that there are needs for things like buses. I wish that number, to be honest with you, when I looked over the numbers, was a little higher on that part of it. I think there may be a need for some things to be in a levy, but the way it's written, it's not written well. I do see every morning and have the parents come into my store that have shuttled kids and had to pick them up from a broken down bus or whatever. So there is a need for transportation upgrades, but it just seems like the number's so small. If we're really trying to fight hard for kids, that would be, I would have liked to have seen that number higher. If this is truly for kids and their safety and getting them to and from where they need to go, that number should have been written a little differently.
Yep. Yes?
Quite a few years ago,
Here, use the mic so other people can hear it.
quite a few years ago, there was a levy where they talked about replacing a boiler that was destroyed and was ignored during a Christmas shutdown. They ran a levy on replacing that boiler. The levy passed. Now, you mentioned replacing that boiler, and the man that's in charge of maintenance says no boilers have ever been replaced. Now you're asking for more money, and I'm thinking of this boiler that never got replaced that should have been paid for, or it was paid for. What happened?
Good question.
That's a darn good question.
That was before my time?
Well, it's not before my time.
Yeah, I get it. Yes?
It's kind of maybe a hard type of question, but it goes to, it goes to the numbers that I saw showing that our students in our district are almost at the bottom as far as grades and academics and such like that. Now, number one, do you agree with that? Number two, what do you think would cause that? Number three, is throwing more money at everyone to solve the problem.
What do you say to that? I mean, facts are stubborn things. Yeah, we have the lowest graduation rate in this area. We also have the lowest test scores. Does more money fix that? You be the judge.
Depends on how you use it.
What do you think caused the problem?
The problem? It could be a number of factors. It could be a number of factors. It could be, low parent participation. It could be environment.
Teacher participation, maybe?
Teacher, I don't know. I'm not there one fixing that. So it could be any number of things.
I think there's a difference of what the role of the board is, because the board isn't involved in the day-to-day operations of the school. So there is a little bit of a segregation of what you're capable of impacting versus what someone else is able to impact.
The board is doing a wonderful job right now. They're doing some good things.
The board is what do you call it? Policy, their guidance, direction, those kind of things. They set the policy for the district. They don't run the day-to-day. We have no day-to-day operations. We're volunteers. I have no staff, I have no nothing that I can go and deal with other than the superintendent. That's it. Yes, ma'am.
So there's all this chitty chat about a forensic audit and a third party doing it. What is the problem with that?
What is the problem with the,
You know, why can't we have one? I mean, I'm so sick of hearing it's for the children. Well, we're all for the children, we're all for the betterment of our communities. But where's else the money going? The last audit, the people voted, the last levy, people voted no. Then they went ahead and ran it again and won.
At exactly the same price.
yes.
And it's getting really annoying.
Okay.
And so, can we do a forensic audit? I mean, what is the problem with that?
The-
So we can see where the money's going.
Yes. I can't speak on that particular item because that would be an action item for the board. And I can't stand here as an individual to say, yes, we can do a forensic audit. That would be a decision, a board decision.
I know there's been a lot of talk about it. So
Yes.
you guys have not officially voted on it then?
Not yet.
So then a question would be that could be answered to play the game that exists for action items is, how do we get that as an action item for the board to make a decision on it? Do you just put it on, or can we send a request in that the board review an action item, discussion, decision for forensics audit? Because that you can answer.
Yes, yes, you can do both. Now, with the upcoming, okay, so I'm not dodging the question because here's two scenarios. A, the levy passes. Okay, we still have to do what I would call a $1.4 million haircut. Okay? At that point, we could ask for a forensic audit. Say, okay, we need to know, where our money's going for. If we're gonna make cuts, where are we gonna make cuts at? Where's the money? How are we spending the money? Okay? If the levy fails, guess what? Forensic audit, because now it's a deep cut. So yes, those two scenarios of forensic audit would play itself out. Yes.
I recall, going to the meetings over the last 12 years, that there was a heating system that failed at the elementary school. That, I don't think Ken Eldor was the head of maintenance at the time.
Right.
And it was brought up and it was repaired. I don't believe that they ever, what I recall them talking about as far as the boiler at the junior high school was that it was going to be $9 million to repair that. And that's as far as it got.
Okay.
It was going to take a facilities bond and, with as much trouble as the district has passing a continuation of a levy that's been ongoing for every year, they weren't going to be able to get $9 million from the community.
Right.
So that, in answer to that question, that's what I recall.
They ran a levy on that boiler.
It was brought up, but then the heat system failed at the grade school and they did repair that. The levy was never on the junior high.
Okay.
I don't know which boiler it was, but I'll tell you what, ignorance.
And I think that's real specific, and I don't think he was in existence on our
He
board at
wasn't.
that time.
But I have a first grade steam engineer license from the city of Seattle. I offered to help them. They wouldn't take it.
Okay.
Right, lady in the back there.
Yes, you.
I've been reading a little bit about Boise, and some of the school districts down in the south are playing games with just this kind of a thing. And one of the issues I have is, why aren't we running a bond? Because it takes more people to pass it than a levy.
Is it
which
a
makes
bond?
fewer.
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
correct.
So I would rather see this be a bond and give it a fair chance.
A bond takes
Yeah.
60%.
Right, 60.
Okay.
66.
Sorry, 66, yes.
2/3.
Yes. This is a simple levy.
Yeah,
Simple
simple,
levy.
meaning we slide it through.
Right. Okay.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Okay, there was a rumor I was hearing about the junior high and somebody buying or leasing the building. And I understand that this building is on the historical data. offer that would be beneficial monetarily wise. But what's going on with that? Is there any truth to that?
There, in a roundabout way, yes. Okay. There was some interest, or still some interest, that could, at some point in time, become a charter school. Okay, and that would still be a historic building, but there hasn't been any talk. It was just an idea floated at a board meeting, at a board meeting, Jackie, the last board meeting Jackie was in, was that that would make a good charter school. Now, one of the things we never talked about, and that's not on anybody's radar screen at the district, is growth. Okay, we have growth in this county, especially this end of the county. There is no provision whatsoever in this budget, the next year budget, any kind of plan to deal with any kind of growth whatsoever. Okay? So how do you deal with that? Well, you partner with people who want to do charter schools, and those kind of things. Now, from a board member, I'm speaking off the record. It's nothing is official or going into the board. There's no discussion right now about that. Okay? I'm just saying that as a possible solution because no solution has been talked about yet. So, to answer your question, yes, that was brought up at a school board meeting, and nothing actionable was brought about. No one's looked at it, but there is a possibility. Those kind of possibilities are out there.
I will actually interject something I think that should be happening. If that is recognized by West Bonner County School District, then when the county is sending out those letters for increased density in an area that doesn't have the infrastructure in the schools, because that is one of the requirements, that the school be very clear and direct in saying we cannot grow at this rate because we don't have a plan for this growth. And when I am sitting at the county office, it's not something we're seeing. We're not seeing the school district say, we can't increase the footprint in that way because we don't have enough teachers. But then partly, I think in this way, the school may have feels like he got screwed a little bit because then he went to a 4-day school week. And people contacted me over the 4-day school week, but then my answer is, well, did the school ever tell the county, you guys are growing too fast, the enrollment and our teacher ratio isn't there, therefore we're going to shift based on availability. But we could impact development by telling the county we can't increase the footprint at this rate. I know we're not talking about specifically the RV campground, but when you look at an increase in density of 20 homes, full-time homes that don't pay into a school district, but they take things out of the school district, that matters. So that's a perfect example of when the school board or the school district gets that question that they say, wait, that's an increase in the infrastructure that we can't support. That's where we could impact that. So that's my unrequested comment on that.
And to piggyback on that, when they send their response as a school district to indicate that they've got no way to raise the money for increased density unless they're doing levies or things like their hands are tied.
And that would require us to sit down and make that very difficult plan instead of just dealing with it as it comes, but actually look at the growth plan.
Right, but your letters back, who gets the letters? Who responds? Who gets to respond?
In the school board, at the school district, the district itself has their own routing system for that particular letter. And that comes from us as people also knowing, hey, you're increasing the development into my area, but our schools are saying they can't absorb that. We need to go to the planning office and we need to go to the county commissioners to say you're causing an issue by the increase in development when we don't have the infrastructure, and school and transportation is part of that infrastructure.
Yes.
So we talk about increased growth in the area and development, so probably increase of children in the area, but it's my understanding that the enrollment in West Bonner County School District has actually gone down in the last few years. Is that not correct?
It was down during COVID, and it's starting to go back up. It's still not.
Do you have those numbers? What
under 1,000 during the COVID. Now it's up to 1,100.
She said they had
1,084.
1,084? Okay. But,
But like say 5 years ago, before COVID, where were we at?
I don't have the numbers in front of us. Do you remember, Maureen?
I
was
know
a-
2 years ago, it was 998.
Okay.
In 2009, we had 1,433 students. In 2016, we had 1,085 students. In 2021, the student population went down to 959. And in 2022, it went back up to 1,064, and I think it's pretty close to that today.
Yes.
But the
Okay.
but the number of teachers has stayed the same?
Well, apparently, because that's why we have such an increase, you know, an overstaffing of 20-some teachers and not getting paid for it from the state. Because the population of the students have gone down, but they've retained the same number of teachers, so that we now have 12 to 1 ratio.
Okay. What?
Well, it's actually not that, because what they don't count is that there's a special education department where there's seriously injured kids that need one-on-one teachers. So that's gonna offset the 25 kindergartners per class at least 2 out of 3 schools. And 25 kindergartners in one class, especially nowadays, is crazy. I mean, the class size, at least at Idaho Hill and Priest River Elementary, is between 20 and 30 per
Okay.
class, except for the special ed, where you have 9 teachers for, 12 kids or 15 kids. So, that's something nobody takes into consideration, is the number of injured children that are in school at this time. When we were growing up, there wasn't any, they just didn't
No.
allow them, now they're all there.
Yeah.
And we have to take care of them, and bus them.
I've been to Priest River Elementary, and they have some severely handicapped kids that need one-on-one attention. We spent some time in that class. And very right about that. So that skews that 12 to 1 ratio off quite a bit. Yes.
So, in my day, we had special day classes, we had RSP classes, resource classes for those kinds of kids, and we had 1 teacher, but we had maybe 2 or 3 aides. Classified employees usually get paid less than certificated. Would that be a possibility? Also, have you considered going year-round, or putting extra teachers into grades K through 3 for those smaller student to teacher ratios, and going with the 4 through 6 or whatever, with a regular classroom of.
Again,
I had 34 in my class.
that would be a district question. That's, again, we do the governance, they do the nuts and bolts, but that would be a good thing to ask the district.
Any other questions for Keith?
Yes.
When are the meetings for the school board and that kind of stuff that we can attend, like public meetings? What days
Third
are-
Wednesday of every month, 6 o'clock. We may be changing the location because we're getting really popular.
Okay.
Before, no one wanted to come, now
Now
we had to put a maximum capacity at the district office. And we will probably be we might be meeting at the high school cafeteria. It's a little bit more secure, got more seating, and stuff. It got pretty cozy in there when we were, working on the levy stuff, so.
And you guys will be here at the Grange, I think it's on the 4th of May, right? Sometime next week, I saw they're going to be at the Grange.
Well, that's an information,
Yeah.
that's just an information thing that Susie Lucky and, maybe another, trustee is gonna be working on. That's just information on the levy. So that's all that's going, it's in.
Wouldn't you think that those information meetings, I've been recommending people go, because if they have I would recommend people go to. Would you agree?
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you Zoom your meetings?
They're on Facebook.
Facebook Live.
They're on Facebook Live. That question was, do we Zoom our meetings? Our meetings are on Facebook Live.
And you can access them, even if you're not a Facebook person, you can go to the district website and access them.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
I don't know Facebook.
It's live on the website too?
Yeah, they're all on the website.
Okay, so and if you didn't hear Ann, you can go to the district website on the night of the meeting and it's live streamed through Facebook Live. If you can't make the meetings and don't want to come see us in person, you can do that.
All righty, thank you.
Thank you.
So I want to thank everybody for coming, spending the best day of the weekend so far, sitting here listening. I think having the people that you elected come back to your community and tell you what they're working on, what they've done, before it's time to start voting for people is what we need to transition for. Not this wait 2 weeks before it's election to figure out who people are, because you never really find out their positions. So I hope that you guys felt like you got a lot of useful information here. I want to encourage people to pay attention to everything local. Local government impacts you faster than anything the President of the United States does. If you look at county government, you make a 2-to-1 decision to take rid of Zoom, you instantly have no Zoom. So we need to make sure that we're holding our elected officials accountable to understand the difference between representative and politician. Representative requires me to do something like this to understand what the people are wanting of me. Politician is, you elected me, now stop calling me until it's time for re-election. And we need to change that in our community. I hope you all were able to go across the edge here and see all the people that came to present information about what's in our community. There have been a lot of people asking, how do we get rights? How do we get people to participate with advocates? And that's something that People's Rights has been doing. We all have concerns about where we're headed medically. Look at medical freedom and tactical homeopathy. They do have a couple of the boxes that they help you put together to understand some first aid medicine. Most importantly, you need to be registered to vote, and you need to assign the party. If you are a Republican, assign Republican, because they changed the platform rules. We are coming up on the opportunity to vote on May, what's the day? 16th. Raise your hand, so one person. Monique.
16.
All right. Where do you vote in Spirit Valley? All right, so there.
Vote in person.
Yes. We vote in person in Spirit Valley. We don't know what people do in San I'm just saying, we understand that value. But make and hold people accountable for answering questions. If you're watching any of our episodes, Tuesday mornings, we stream at 9. We are not quite getting paid per click, but that's my secret mission to see if we can get some tax relief by our increased viewership. Because we have cycled through episodes of CSI, Snapped, and oh my goodness, how Bar County turns. However, if we allow the frustration of not getting the outcome we want, push us out of that meeting, we have lost. It doesn't matter what the outcome is, we need to keep coming together as a team for the constitutional, liberty-minded, conservative viewpoint that the people wanted in office when they made those decisions. When people say they're not going to answer a question, and I will say this because I've been asked a lot, what do you do about the commissioner's office? That is your job. There is nothing higher than a commissioner in local government. I will tell you the answer early from the Attorney General because I do have a response. What is it that I can do to help you other than tell them to follow the rules? It's you guys that have to undo what you don't like about who you elect. And that's for every position. And the way you do it is by bringing them here so that you can hear what they have to say they did do, what they didn't do, and what they're supposed to be doing. Our legislature is not full-time, it's part-time. So what are they doing the rest of the year to make sure they understand how we need to be represented at the state? We need to make sure we're taking back our government, and it starts locally. So I appreciate your time. Thank you for coming. And you can Zoom, you can YouTube. You will be able to Rumble, which is awkward that our county would say, let's make that decision now, because we've been doing it since January 9th. But we're going to move to that platform also every Tuesday to hold myself accountable, but so that you can hold me accountable for what it is that I'm doing for you every week. I encourage you, if you're not in District 2, that you reach out to your elected official to tell you what they're working on. Because if they're not telling you what they're working on, you are not being represented, and by the time you realize it, it's too late. And that's a huge frustration for me to not know why I'm reporting out and I don't know what other people are working on. But you do that by you guys calling and being a physical presence, and if necessary, a physical nuisance to the county, so that if that person decides they want to be your senator, you know I'm sending someone that I can trust and depend on, not someone that I'm not going to realize until they're too far away for me to manage them. So thank you all for coming. Enjoy the session.